You are watching the Fayetteville Government Channel. Up next, full coverage of the latest meeting of the Fayetteville City Council. The Fayetteville City Council is the legislative body of the City of Fayetteville. Its 8 members are elected by the citizens of Fayetteville. It establishes policy, determines budgets, and considers ordinances that govern the city. The City Council meets on the first and third Tuesday of each month. And now, the Fayetteville City Council.
I would like to call the City Council meeting of April the 3rd to order. Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Lewis.
Here.
Gray. Here. Boudreaux.
Here.
Kenyon.
Here.
Petty.
Here.
Tennant.
Here.
Farrell.
Here.
Adams.
Here.
Mayor Jordan.
Here. Would you join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the first order of business is the nominating committee report.
Yes, Mayor, we have a couple of additions to our report that we made 2 weeks ago that was made. Civil Service Commission, we would like to appoint Michael Ferguson for 1 term in the 3/31/18. And on the Housing Authority Board of Commissioners, John Edwards, 1 unexpired term ending 12/28/13. That concludes our additional report.
Move approval. Second.
A motion second to approve the nominating committee nominations, so appointments. So Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Lewis.
Yes.
Gray. Yes. Boudreaux.
Yes.
Kenyon.
Yes.
Petty.
Yes.
Tennant.
Yes.
Farrell.
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
Okay, before I get into the consent agenda, I understand we're going to pull item number 3 off the consent and put it before we do unfinished business. So don't don't let me forget to do that, okay? All right, let me read the consent agenda. Number 1, approval of the March 20th, 2012 City Council meeting minutes. Number 2, McClellan Consulting Engineers Incorporated Amendment Number 1. Resolution approving an amendment number 1 to the agreement with McClellan Consulting Engineers Incorporated for airport engineering services. We pull number 3. Number 4, Craft and Toll and Associates, a resolution approving a contract with Craft and Toll and Associates in an amount not to exceed $120,000 for engineering services to design water and sewer creek crossing repairs related to spring 2011 floods, approving a project contingency of $6,000 and approving a budget adjustment. Number 5, bid number 12-14, Heckathorn Construction Company, a resolution awarding bid number 12-14 and approving a contract with Heckathorn Construction Company in the amount of $42,421 for the structural repair of 3 storm-damaged structures at the Biosolids Management Site. Number 6, Environmental Consulting Operations Incorporated, Amendment Number 6. Resolution approving Amendment Number 6 to the engineering contract with Environmental Consulting Operations Incorporated in the amount of $42,660 for pipeline, stormwater, wetlands, and environmental issues and 2012 wetland site maintenance and reporting. Number 7, IES Active Training USA, a resolution approving an agreement with IES Interactive Training USA in the amount of $28,462.90 pursuant to a federal procurement agreement with the General Services Administration for the purchase of a use of force simulator for the police department. I accept the consent agenda as read.
Second.
We have a motion is second to accept the consent agenda as read. Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Lewis.
Yes.
Gray. Yes. Boudreaux.
Yes.
Kenyon.
Yes.
Petty.
Yes.
Tennant.
Yes.
Farrell.
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
All right, on the item number 3, Keeling Company, it says a resolution authorizing purchase of additional 2 irrigation wheels from Keeling Company, and the total amount is $77,333.34 plus applicable sales taxes pursuant to bid number 11-71 for affluent irrigation to hayfields.
Yes, we need a motion to amend the resolution to what the mayor just read. This just added the sales tax. We forgot to have the sales tax on before.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second to accept the resolution. Is there
No,
any-
to amend the
I'm
resolution to the
sorry.
one you just read.
All right, amend the resolution to what we just read. Okay. Is there any public comment on this? See none, bring it back to the council. A motion and a second. Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Lewis.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Boudreaux.
Yes.
Kenyon.
Yes.
Petty.
Yes.
Tennant.
Yes.
Farrell.
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
Okay, under unfinished business,
Now we need a motion to actually
So
approve
moved.
the
Sorry.
resolution.
Second.
we have a motion and a second to pass the resolution. Any comments on that? Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Lewis.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Boudreaux.
Yes.
Kenyon.
Yes.
Petty.
Yes.
Tennant.
Yes.
Farrell.
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
Okay, under unfinished business, number one, amend chapter 151, definition of family. An ordinance to amend the definition of family found in chapter 151, definitions of the Unified Development Code to allow the city council to authorize up to 5 unrelated persons in some units of a planned zoning district. That has been brought back to the council. It's on third reading, correct? Okay, what comments do we have, council, on this? Matthew?
I don't have much to say to start. I think that we had some really good comments from the council 4 weeks ago at the last meeting, and I think for the most part everybody made their first impressions clear. I do have some final comments, but I want to wait until after the public has had a chance to speak before I give those.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, we will take public comment. Here's the rules. It's the same rules we've always had. Everybody gets one turn at the microphone. Please introduce yourself and what your address is. Do not engage an alderman. Keep your remarks to the chair. That's me. You can say pretty much whatever you want to me. Do not engage an alderman and be courteous. The topic is basically the amend chapter 151 definition of family. So I want to stay on that topic. All right? Everybody good with that? Okay. Well, everybody just needs to step up to the podium, introduce yourself, and let us begin. Now, the only other time that you can have another time at the microphone is if an alderman calls you up to ask you questions. Okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. Here we go. Introduce yourself, please.
Good evening. Good evening, Mr. Jordan. My name is Martin Bemberg. I'm a resident of Ward 2. I've resided at 217 East Lafayette for all but 7 months of my 24 years of life. I'd like to address the proposed revision to the occupancy ordinance passed several years ago. One thing is certain. The proposed change to the city ordinance in question will have disastrous effects for many residents of Ward 4. This is not about redefining what a family is according to the laws of our city. It is about some going behind the backs of the people of the city secretly and nefariously in order to allow a development that no one but a single property owner and certain developers want, in order to fill their coffers at the expense of the residents of Ward 4. Those who propose this revision with full knowledge of these facts should be ashamed of themselves for tricking honest people into believing that this revision was written in order to accomplish something that it is clearly not meant to accomplish. This ruse will not stand. The repercussions of this ordinance revision will be disastrous and benefit the few at the expense of a great number of residents of Ward 4. The people of Ward 4 have stated clearly and with good reason that they do not want the development of an excessive and unneeded student housing complex, the residents of which are certain to lower the property values of the current residents of Ward 4, and it is nothing short of shameful that the council would even consider this measure given its disastrous implications. Did I mention that the University of Arkansas itself has not even requested that this student housing complex be developed? We must then ask this simple question: who wants this and why, and who benefits? Certainly not the residents of Ward 4, save a single property owner. Based on what I have learned about this issue from a very dedicated investigation, I can say this revision was proposed in secret by a conniving lawyer who insisted that he was acting independently, when in fact it is clear that he was representing a single landowner who wants nothing more than to sell a piece of property to be developed and as a result fill her pockets at the expense of her neighbors. It would be shameful to pass this measure, a measure proposed in secret and with no concern for the people whom it will affect most, and affect most negatively at that. It is nothing short of a disgrace and an enormous disservice to the city, and furthermore it is a sign that small-time property owners and residents of Fayetteville are at the mercy of their more wealthy, powerful, and influential neighbors. I say the following without a hair of hesitation. Shame on those who support this measure with full knowledge of its implications. The people of Fayetteville deserve better, and the people of Fayetteville will hold its supporters accountable, hold its representatives accountable for destroying their trust in their city's policymakers. This much is certain. We all deserve better, and our representatives will either understand this simple fact or suffer the wrath of the voters when their day of judgment comes. This proposal is a shameful testament to the secrecy within our government. I will not stand for it, and the people stand with me. Mr. Mayor, I implore you to kill this measure. You have the power, Mr. Jordan. I implore you to clear your conscience. I implore you to serve the people who graciously endowed you with the power that can so readily be used for dishonest and unjust policy. Do the right thing, Mr. Mayor. Kill this measure. Kill this measure now for the sake of our sacred property rights, for the sake of our future, for the sake of Fayetteville. Thank you for your time, Mr. Jordan. Please extend my gratitude to Mrs. and Mrs. Rhonda Adams, Mark Kenyon, and Sarah Lewis for discussing this issue with me out in the open with transparency and with honesty in mind, and for helping me understand this issue enough to take a stand. Thank you.
Thank you.
And for comment, I will be at Rogers Rec.
Okay.
Good night.
All right. Thank you. All right. Everybody come on up. If you want to talk, you might want to start lining up. I'm sure there'll be several folks tonight.
My name is Kathy Short. I'm the Neighborhood Association rep for Sang Valley. You have received many emails from me. I know that you know how I feel about this. I'm completely against it. And might I say, Martin Bimberg was my student. I didn't even recognize him. But I'm very proud of him because I agree with everything that he said. I have read every FOIA that we have gotten. And I'm just completely astonished and amazed. And I do hope that, I know this issue needs to be addressed, and I'm not saying that we need to kill it, but I'm saying that it needs to be set aside and researched very well, so that our city doesn't suffer, so that our university we can work together. And I think that's how I'm approaching this, is that we work together. And I have not seen that thus far. And I'm quite disappointed.
Okay. Who would be next?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening, Walt.
My name is Walt Eilers. I'm a resident currently at 2044 West Archer Drive here in Fayetteville. I've got a brief statement. You all have received emails from me also. This evening I appeal to you as the council, as a Fayetteville investor, and I'm asking you to step back from the passage of this amendment this evening to redefine the definition of family. The process to bring this change to a long-standing set of community devised standards going back to 2000 has not been inclusive. It has not been consistent with the culture of Fayetteville that we have come to know, where there are community plans, there are charrettes, and there's engagement of those directly affected. I encourage you not to ring this bell, because once y'all ring this bell, you cannot unring it. I mentioned that I speak as a Fayetteville investor, and I'm sure some of you are confused, but I use that as a graphic. I speak for a class of those of us who were not included in the discussion or the development of this amendment. Investors like me are those who have invested their life savings in their property, who pay our taxes on time, who support our schools, who donate to local charities, and who are consistently engaged in this, our community. We are the volunteers that give Fayetteville its uniqueness. Investors, term I'm using, are different from customers. Not better, just different because of their level of commitment. Investors have an ownership stake in the community by virtue of the time, talent, and financial commitment they make. We are here for the long haul. Customers are also important in the equation for the community and the economy. but they are here for a game, an event, a development, such as we're talking about, or a semester or several, and then they move along in their life path. Customers have a vital place in the economy and in the community and in the discussion, but they lack the degree of investment of the investors. My appeal to you this evening is no different than it's been for the past month since I learned of this in late March. Consider the impact and the quality of our lives, both of the customers and the investors. Consider the impact on the investors' property values. Consider how this change will be explained and enforced so that it does not become the standard. And then consider a broader, long-range view of how this community will grow and change as the university grows and changes. Please do not ring that bell.
Thank you, Mayor.
Can I ask Walt, can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
There.
Yes.
Hey, Walt, are there, thank you for your comments. When it comes to voters, is there any delineation in a voter? Is there an investor voter and a
Customer
voter? Or are they all voters?
They could all be voters. But what I know for a fact is the people who live here and are registered to vote and pay property tax are the ones who get out and vote. You know that, I know that from elections.
I just wonder if there was a difference in them.
I don't see a difference in the voter. I see a difference in the level of the commitment that the people have in the long term.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bobby.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. My name is Donna Daniels, and I'm a resident of Ward 4. And I've lived in Fayetteville and worked at the university for almost 30 years now, and have seen many changes. Fayetteville citizens have always been extremely proud of the quality of life. The city's has made the top 10 best places to live on many national lists. This ordinance is about quality of life, and quality of life includes traffic, infrastructure, noise, trash, and many other issues. However, this proposed ordinance is not in the best interest in the quality of life of the residents of Ward 4, let alone the rest of Fayetteville. This ordinance is a town and gown issue. And as I was reading the paper yesterday, and it mentioned that my alderwoman had spoken to many students, I thought, I wonder how many of them are Fayetteville residents. So I went back and I looked that information up. Of the ASG officers, only one officer is a Fayetteville resident. Of all the ASG senators, only 3 of them are Fayetteville residents. And so talking about customers versus investors, this goes right to the heart of this issue. Yes, the students are important, but they are not the permanent residents of this city. And when you have only 4 people who are Fayetteville residents, a part of ASG, and they were a big portion of the people that my alderwoman spoke to, that's a very, very small percentage. So this is about the city and the university coming together to find solutions that provide a win-win situation for all, not for one project and for one family. The article, as reported in the February 20th Northwest Arkansas Business Journal, developers are jockeying for position. At that time, they listed 4 developments that have been identified to come online August 2013, and will provide an additional 2,500 beds to the existing apartment inventory. This doesn't include the 600 beds that are going to come online in Hotz Hall on the U of A campus. And those 600 beds will be for freshmen. Kathy Deck, the Center for Business and Economic Research at the U of A, stated, "It harkens back to the great housing boom in Northwest Arkansas when too many houses were built to chase too few buyers." Deck agrees The surge in student enrollment necessitates a clear need for additional off-campus housing, student housing. But are too many developers identifying the need at once? I think we've had 3 or 4 developers kind of come out of the woodwork since this February 20th article was published. None of us dispute the need for this housing. Deck goes on to say that she believes dropping such a large number of beds into the existing inventory all at once will have a clear impact on the overall market. We know there is a demand for additional units, but in the short term, we may see vacancy rates at a very unhealthy level. It's a large number of beds, particularly when you compare it to the existing stock. Then again, in the March 5th Northwest Arkansas Business, there was an article entitled Anticipated Student Housing Glut Gets Lindsay and Associates Attention. And Lindsay has about a quarter of the apartments in Northwest Arkansas. In that article, Joe Branch, who works for Lindsay, states, "It scares me a little that this is happening. We have had vacancy issues during the recession, but none this past year. But this past year is when the market has picked back up, and I feel we have recovered. But if we get a bunch more units, and there are more places for students to choose from, it could definitely saturate the market." We know the developers are circling in hopes this ordinance passes. There's a lot of research out there on how cities and universities are collaborating, such as the International Town and Gown Association at Clemson University. In Corvallis, Oregon, Oregon State University, the Gazette-Times, February 7th of this year, they reported the efforts of that city. Probably not a lot of difference in terms of the size of the student body there, 23,000 students. U of A's getting right about 25,000. The Oregon State University and City of Corvallis Collaboration Project Steering Committee met for the first time on Monday evening to hammer out how to move the project forward. And with the ground rules of the 3-year project in place, so they're taking their time and they're making sure they're doing it right so that the quality of life is preserved. The committee plans to hold more town hall meetings, hire a project manager, and assemble work groups in the next 6 months. All of this is aimed at resolving town-gown issues between permanent Corvallis residents and the OSU community that have simmered for decades, just like in Fayetteville, but have reached a boiling point in the past few years due to OSU's explosive student population. Just last week, President Bobbitt addressed the U of A faculty. I was in the audience, and as he talked about how universities are changing. We're no longer an agrarian society. There's no reason to start classes in August and end them in May. There's no reason to hold classes for 15 weeks at a time. There's a lot of ways to deliver classes in a distanced manner. And someone said, so what happens down the road? Look into your crystal ball and tell us what happens when we have to shutter all these buildings because we are delivering classes in a different manner. And he said, and this is very true, there will always be that element that want the college experience. But we know from our families and our neighbors, there are many people who are looking for the college experience, but they have other priorities as well. And they are looking for a different way of having their courses delivered. So when we talk about housing and definitions of family, this all comes together as Town and Gown and the university and needs to be discussed. Fayetteville is at a sea change point. Why aren't we being more forward thinking? Why are we rushing this through? I've seen the FOIA documents. I know that Ms. Marinoni started campaigning back in November with the city staff with the alder people, with the developer to get this ordinance in place. And we, the residents of Ward 4, are continually told, well, we've given you plenty of time. Ms. Marinoni didn't try to meet with us until January. And she had 2 extra months. She could have been meeting with us. And this reminds me of the line out of the movie Network, we're mad as hell and we're not going to take it anymore. Finally, in the 2005 Georgia Journal of International and Comparative Law, and Mr. Mayor, I know you've heard this before, but it doesn't hurt to hear it again as I tell the students. How are local governments responding to student rental problems in university towns in the United States, Canada, and the UK? And this is the summary of the article. Although there is no single solution that exists to resolve the student rental problems in these university towns, there is a need for an effective strategy to resolve such problems that should include 4 basic elements: the university's cooperation in controlling the number of students living off campus, consistent enforcement of local nuisance laws. And I want to thank Chief Tabor. I feel like I'm Cinderella at the ball right now because all of the police motorcycle patrols in my neighborhood, it's wonderful. I've never experienced it, and I've lived down on Lawrence Circle for over 20 years. So I wonder what's going to happen after this meeting. The third one is the effective planning laws and policies limiting the concentration of student rentals in residential neighborhoods. Many university towns have put in place overlay districts to protect the residential areas that surround a university. And fourth, mutual town and gown efforts to foster good relations between officials, permanent residents, and students. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right. Who will be next?
Mayor Jordan, councilmen and council ladies, and Mr. Williams, council. My name is John Fawcett. I live at 2104 West Lawrence Circle off Sang Avenue, Ward 4. As far as, there's so much to talk about on this. I didn't quite know where to start. I have probably three issues here. I see one that you've heard over and over, the lack of dialogue with the university, since they're probably indirectly behind the push for the student housing into residential areas. I feel there needs to be dialogue between the city, between the university, and between the community, us. I also think that since they are a part of our city, they need to be brought in that manner. Not, right now there's been rumors here and there about, they're pushing all this and some grumbling and that sort of thing. But if we can all participate as a unit, I think it will come out a lot better. That's why I think it's better to maybe not make the decision tonight on this. There's still a lot of dialogue. I hate to see something pass, then the dialogue. I hate to see that happen, even though that may be some of the PDZ zoning philosophy. The other issue that I see is the burden of increased traffic on certain streets, neighborhoods, and intersections. Not only the increase in traffic, but the increase of people. The other, which you definitely know about, is the difficulty in the enforcement process that now exists, and by passing this amendment to the ordinance of 5 occupancy, more than likely is going to place a greater burden on the enforcement process that already exists, that is the process for the control of certain issues. When I first learned about this back in February, I began to think to myself, how is the city of Fayetteville going to be able to control this change to occupancy of 5 when it's already somewhat difficult to enforce it anyway? As basically been stated by Mr. Williams, the council, and also it was mentioned in yesterday's paper. Whether this passes or not, the enforcement is still kind of an issue. This is a citywide change. I understand that, but it's also a greater burden on some areas of Ward 4. Also, when I first learned about it, I learned about the property that's in the vicinity of Westwood subdivision, where Lauren Circle is, the potentially to be a PZD zoning for cottage style dwellings, and that's just talking around is how I understood that. I understood the plan is for 2 to 5 bedrooms. I also heard that there was talk of 600 units. I also heard directly from the landowner 410 units. Well, if it's going to be 2 to 5 bedrooms, you average those out. That's 3.5 bedrooms per unit. If you take the 3.5 bedrooms times potentially, whether it's 410 or 600, that's anywhere from 1,400 to 2,100 vehicles. And that's going to put a burden, I'm almost sure, on Sane, on Cleveland, on Hossel, on the intersection of Cleveland and Razorback, on the intersection of Razorback and Maple, which is, that corner is already kind of a mess at some times. And with the potential of projects that's going to be brought to you on April the 23rd that involves the Cleveland and Hall intersection, when we had the Ward 4 meeting the other night, I asked the question to the developer, how many vehicles are you expected to have? And he danced around that question. And I said, well, surely, by now you should know what you're going to have. So how many is it? He still danced around it. Well, that's going to be a number of vehicles up there, too. At least, he said 220 units, but I was talking about bedrooms. So anywhere from 220 cars to so far as the lowest number. And I'm not sure that intersection can handle that. And that traffic is going to be on Cleveland. That traffic is going to end up on Sane. And you know, one thing which you've probably seen in an email that I sent to you, right now there's no speed limit sign on the north side of Cleveland between Leverett Elementary, the stoplight, and that four-way stop at the corner of Cleveland and Razorback. There is on the south side, and there's also a speed limit sign that's laying down on the ground about 75 yards from that Cleveland and Maple Street, Cleveland Razorback corner. Why is that? And for the longest time, I saw a speed limit sign laying down on the ground on Cleveland. But now there is one up on Cleveland, but that's the only stop sign on the north side of the road, Cleveland, from the stoplight at Cleveland and Garland down to Osage Bend, even though you got a stop sign in between. So those are some concerns I have there. I can't see why. Another thing too is any development that's going to happen down west of Sane, there's a creek down there. That's Hamstring Creek. Hamstring Creek is in the floodplain. There are property owners on Berry, the west end of Berry, the west end of Bora, and on Lonnie, and goes on across Weddington Drive that are in the floodplain. Any development that occurs on the extreme property to the west that abuts the interstate, and that property, and the property between that property and Sane, any development there is going to push a further burden on that creek, on those people that are already in the floodplain. Especially when you build the land up, there's going to be more of a water force on that particular, on those particular people. And it is the 500-year floodplain, and I think the 100-year floodplain. So that's a concern. That's the concern I have for those residents there. And the way the floodplain issue with FEMA right now goes, you know, they're backing away from insuring in floodplain issues now to some degree. And as far as the university students, we have several university students renting property in our neighborhood. You got the email about my city issue trash can getting launched into the next county, I trust, by a high-speeding avalanche on Lawrence Circle. I also mentioned about another college student backing his Jeep that has tires almost above my chest to right about right here, all the way from Sane in front of my house down to his house, roughly a little over 200 feet. To me, that's a couple of immature situations. And you also got my email, my virtual tour actually, about the corner of Maple and Oliver. Now I went to some effort to do that, to help your city code department take care of the issue of all those partying kids. And I went by that place at about 6:15 Friday night, and they were whooping it up. And even out on the street, Oliver. And so I go back the next day at 7:15 just to see. And what I said there were 16 cars amongst those three houses, one old one, existing one, and two fairly new ones, and a motorcycle and a moped. I wondered to myself, if I hadn't done that, I know there's probably been other complaints of people along in those neighborhoods, or at least that's what I thought I had understood. How, and with what I turned in, I'm waiting to see the teeth that the ordinance has to enforce that issue. However, we're coming at the end of the school year. So, yeah, I understand that there'll be more, there'll be turnover, and we'll have to go through this process again. But how much teeth is that enforcement issue going to have? And, you know, when those houses were built, or at least one of them, all those houses, those three houses are owned by the same three people. And it was lot split, but the same three people still own all of them. When one of those houses was built, probably 527 Oliver, excuse me, it was turned in as a 4-bedroom house. But it's more like a boarding house. I know when your building inspection department sees plans, if they suspect something, I'm sure they can't comment about it, because they only can comment what's been presented before them. And it's the appearance of a 4-bedroom house. But it's definitely that house, 512 Maple, are definitely boarding houses, in my opinion. And you got a newer house up the street on the same side that's a 4-bedroom house with a giant meeting room in the back of it, with a concrete driveway that goes around the back. You know, what's that to be? I just think that we got to look at our enforcement issue. To me, to pass something, then talk about it with whoever, and let enforcement issue come into play, thinking that they will, may not be the best planning. Yes, we have a police force, but the police force is spread too thin as it is. Yes, they have new vehicles, but they don't have the manpower to fill those vehicles, plus go out and answer enforcement calls. I'm just waiting to see what kind of teeth is put in, at least on this corner. At least you all got a good look at what those cars were. I mean, the number of cars. And of course, there were some people sleeping over with, you know, girlfriend, boyfriend. You know, can't fault that. But still, it's all, and we're going to have those issues even more so. You go to 5 bedrooms in this community. You never know if someone does a PDC zoning on the east side of town, in one of the other wards, it may be justifiable to do that. And that means they can put 5 bedrooms there. And I'm sure there's nobody here from Ward, I don't know that, from Ward behind me, from Ward 1, 2, and 3, because they don't think it's not going to be in their backyard, so why worry about it? So one question I want to ask, if this does pass tonight, or if you delay it and it passes in 3 or 4 weeks, since this is I guess an addition to the ordinance, which is basically an amendment to the ordinance, it won't take effect for 30 days after it's passed, unless objections are raised to it. Is that correct?
No, that's my understanding.
That's
okay.
correct.
Okay, that is correct. Okay, so we'll be, I guess, back in the same situation here if someone raises objection to it, which more than likely will. So, but anyway, I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, and I appreciate your all's hard work, and I appreciate, you know, just being here, and whatever you all decide, I'll abide by it, of course. All right. Thank you much.
Thank you, John.
Hey, Mayor,
Yes,
Yes.
Bobby.
Go ahead,
And then Dell.
okay, John, just a quick question. Would you agree that growth for a community overall is good?
Overall, probably so. If you're talking about
I'm not talking about one specific place, I'm just saying overall in the community.
overall community, I think it's good, but I see more growth happening up north in Benton County.
Second question, had you complained to code compliance before about what's going on now before this proposed amendment came about?
No. It's when I first learned about it in February, and that's
One more, if you happen to see any of those, maybe you did, but if you happen to see any of those signs down, I know we should watch for that, but please let us know, the city, we'll get them back up.
okay. All right. Okay.
Thank you.
Della has a
John.
question.
I wanted you to kind of clarify for us, many of us weren't at the Ward 4 meeting. Now, you said something about a developer was there. What developer?
The developer that's, I don't know whether I need to mention names or not, but the developer that's in charge of the Cleveland project.
Oh, the Cleveland project, okay.
That's on the corner of Cleveland and Hall Street.
And he said it was bringing in how many units or how many
He said
beds?
220. Is that right? Okay, 220 units, okay. And I just, and a lot of people had a lot of questions.
Are those 2-bedroom units?
I don't know, because he would not answer that question. I know it would be at least 220 vehicles because 220 units, but he wouldn't answer anything higher than that.
Thank
And
you.
of course, the diagram that he had, the front elevation, I have to think personally that he already knows. What else? Why would he have a drawing? And of course, the other side of this, his project will be presented to you all on the 23rd of April. And in this issue now, and of course he's doing a PDZ. That's the Friday, I guess, is when the signs went up, the posted signs, because I didn't see them Thursday and I wasn't by there Friday. He's doing a PDZ zoning. And of course we have this issue now, the 5 occupancy, which is related to the PDZ zoning. And even though he said at the outset of the meeting that as I wasn't there, but as I heard somebody say, that he's dissociated from that 5 occupancy. Well, is he? We won't know that. If it passes, we'll find out.
Thank you.
All right?
Question,
No.
Mayor.
Yes.
There's a lot of green space around the university, and it's all zoned something, and some of it is zoned single-family dwellings, 4 houses per acre. Does that concern you at all about a development going in near you or me or around the university or around Fayetteville? But I'm
Yes.
specifically thinking about close to the university, where by right a property owner can build 4 houses per acre without ever coming to us. It'll just go through the planning door. Is that in your mind? We're talking about our own backyard, I guess now, best in your mind? You sell real estate, I think.
Yes, ma'am.
And so it's already zoned. You prefer us to continue with the zoning in place without considering any other options. Is that what I hear you say?
That's probably correct.
Okay.
That land there, I think, to the west of us, well, right now it's MSF4, I think. I know the corner of Cleveland and Hall is MFS 40, I think, which is 40 units per acre. And with his PDZ zoning there, will allow him to, and it's 2.7 acres, I think. It will be 80 units per acre. So it's a higher density. I'm talking about that spot. For the other spot, the proximity it is to the subdivisions, even though they're kind of older, I still see the burden that whatever goes there, from Sang west, is going to have some issues with the surrounding area, the surrounding creek, as I mentioned. There's also, I guess the city hadn't abandoned this, there's also an access from the property that fronts on Sang onto Berry. That potentially can be used. And I don't think those folks will like that. In my experience with students, I've rented a few students, and I live around a few students. I can just see it going to be amplified. Whatever goes there. And I know you can't, but I know you can't discriminate against other people that want to move in whatever goes there. I also learned this, I'm not sure about this, but on the 5 bedrooms, this is probably a developer's issue, or let's say a landlord's issue. When you have 5 bedrooms, you have 5 tenants, okay? If one of those tenants decide to leave, then you got 4, okay? The person that's probably going to rent that is the landlord, so he'll put in there who he chooses, all right? So if that's the case, you know, whoever he puts in there may not be able to get along with the other 4. And probably the other 4 are going to leave, and that place will become vacant. The only place I see that would work is sorority or fraternity, who already have some common bond. And Lordy, I don't want that. But, you know, that's going to be a landlord's issue. And of course, something that doesn't get rented gets run down, all that stuff most of the time. And, you know, you've heard about a student, a college student on the north side of our street, Lawrence Circle, that almost ran over a child, 4-year-old child, and then badmouthed one of the neighbors. Just a lot of immaturity, and I hate to be living around immaturity. I hate to be nursemaiding these kids. I really do. And I hate to be the teeth of the ordinance, of the enforcement. Excuse me, the teeth of that. You know, one of y'all said that it really depends upon us. Well, I guess so. When it gets off your table, it gets on our table. Then we're faced with the issue of trying to do something about it. But we're not paid to do that. We just got a community that we're trying to protect. You know, y'all got city people underneath you, code enforcement, and there are other ordinances that I think the code enforcement ordinance needs to deal with too. One of them, signs. You know, it just goes and goes. But your enforcement issue doesn't seem to have the teeth. But I know whatever goes in those two properties, you know, I don't know which would be the less of two evils, but also Maple Street. If Maple Street is considered as an outlet from wherever that land is developed, it borders our subdivision, Westwood subdivision, on the south side. If that street's widened, that's behind on the south side of the subdivision, it's going to affect those people on that side. If there's been talk about, I know this stuff is not officially on the books yet, but it's been talked about, so why not talk about it? There is an opportunity that using that road for access out onto Seine to get to wherever you're going, then a university bus stop would be right there at Maple Street and Seine. That last house on that side, that's going to affect them pretty good. And you know, if you have sidewalks there, people walking, it's just going to be a mess. I just can't imagine. And of course, I wouldn't think the bus would take the route to go up Hossel. You know, that's a death trap in itself for the most part. And if that's the case, that needs to be widened. And in Waterman Woods, if you have something that comes out on Seine from that property, it's on the way. I understand. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was leaving, but you
I know you were. I know. Did that answer your question?
Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Who would like to be next?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. My name is Alan Long, and I live in Waterman Woods. To begin, thank you for your help in changing the zoning to allow for 5 unrelated persons to live in a unit. My only concern is that it requires each 5-person unit must be placed within a freestanding structure. This restriction would seem to prevent a 5-bedroom duplex unit. The decrease in density caused by having all single-family homes offsets the economic benefits of allowing a 5-bedroom unit. John Aiken, Senior VP of Capstone Collegiate Communities, wrote these excerpts in an email to Rhonda Adams on January 30th of 2012. My community believes that our aldermen should be focusing not on what the developers need, but what we, as long-term Fayetteville residents, need. I, along with many other Fayetteville citizens, would like to see research completed and evaluated before going forward with any ordinance that alters the definition of family. I know that City Council members have said that this ordinance would just give them the ability to look at a plan. But without knowing how this will impact Fayetteville in the long run, say, I don't know, 20 years from now, we have no idea what we're looking at. Student off-campus housing growth needs to be looked at from a bottom-up standpoint. How will this fit with Fayetteville Forward Plan? Where and in what proximity do we want these developments in regards to the university and residential neighborhoods? Ask yourselves, what do my constituents want? These are important issues and questions, and without knowing the answers, we could unknowingly and detrimentally impact the growth of Fayetteville from the standpoint of the long-term resident and the off-campus student. Postponing this decision will allow you, our Fayetteville City Council, to make a more educated and business-like decision. The timeline for the developers is not the most important question before you today. Developers will always want to fill the needs of Fayetteville, but understanding our needs, that is paramount to the positive growth of our community. I'm only going to ask one thing of each of you here tonight, and that's not to open the door to anything before you fully understand it. Thank you.
Comment?
Yes.
Mr. Long? I didn't have a question. I just wanted to make a correction.
Absolutely.
Your reading of the ordinance, as you say at the beginning, is actually incorrect.
My reading of which ordinance? I'm sorry?
The ordinance for discussion. When you said that it would require that each unit that could allow up to 5 people be a single freestanding unit.
No, I'm sorry, that's not actually what I said. I was reading a direct quote from John Aiken, who's the Senior Vice President of Capstone Collegiate Communities, in his email to Rhonda Adams. That's not actually my
Well, then you probably shouldn't repeat it as being example of...
My point there was to point out...
Well, I just wanted to correct that a duplex in this configuration actually would be possible.
Yes.
And that's all I wanted to say.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Good evening. My name is James Butch Koger. I live at 2109 West Lawrence Circle, and I'm going to go after Mr. Long, so maybe I can, I saw a lot of puzzled looks when that email was referred to, so I happen to have a few copies of it here, the FOIA that we actually were able to get this email.
Mr. Coger, I would ask you to please come up to the podium and let's...
Yes,
please.
Mayor, I was just providing copies for the audience there.
I understand.
This email contains a lot of very interesting information. Thank you for helping change the zoning to allow for 5 unrelated persons. Excuse me, it says Rhonda. Thank you for helping change the zoning to allow for 5 unrelated persons to live in 1 unit. And this is from Mr. John Aiken, Senior Vice President, Capstone Collegiate Communities. And Capstone normally does just deal with colleges, not necessarily developers, but just colleges like the University of Arkansas. See, I've reviewed the draft changes, and my only concern is that it requires each 5-person unit must be placed within a freestanding structure. This restriction would seem to prevent a 5-bedroom duplex unit, as well as our manor house, which is 1 building with 4 5-bedroom units. The manor houses are extremely popular because the 4 units surround a common courtyard and gathering space. Likewise, we position the duplex units to create interior courtyards for the students. I have attached marketing materials for our project in College Station, Texas. Pages 17 to 24 show elevations of manor houses and 5-bedroom duplex houses. If we are required to build all 5-bedroom single homes, then we will have to separate the houses by 12 feet. Although 12 feet does not sound like a lot of space, when you multiply it across an entire development, it adds up to a considerable amount of space that is not usable by the tenants. Also, the decrease in density caused by having all single-family homes offsets the economic benefits of allowing a 5-bedroom unit. Please feel free to give me a call either by my direct line or my cell phone at your convenience to discuss, and thank you again for your help. Something that seems to be really interesting here is that this developer is definitely not happy with just a 5-bedroom cottage-style home. He goes on to talk about a 5-bedroom duplex, and of course we all know a duplex is 2 houses in one, so he's talking about wanting a 10-bedroom single dwelling. He's not just happy with the 1-5. And then he goes on to talk about a 4-bedroom manor house, which we're talking about a 20-bedroom single dwelling. And this is a developer talking about the Marinoni property out there, what he wants to see in the way of density on it. Then we even go on to say, you know, we have the separation in buildings for fire safety. Mainly, it's a fire safety rule that we have. And then he goes on to say that he doesn't like the 12-foot spacing because that won't let him stack the buildings in close enough to get the density that he wants. So my whole main point in bringing this up is a good friend of mine and a person that is very well versed in city business made the comment to me that if this ordinance is passed with 5 bedrooms in a single structure, even though it is required to be in a PZD at this point, she said, mark my words, if it's passed, it won't be any time at all before people outside of a PZD will be requesting it, and because it's a precedent in a PZD, most likely they'll get it, and probably eventually it will go down to where somebody remodeling an older home will ask for it on that home, and who knows, there's a good chance that they could get it. So this is a monumental step if this is allowed. There is really no reason in the world to rush into this, to pass this. This is something that, like Mr. Eiler said, once we ring the bell, it cannot be unrung. This needs to be studied in depth, and the university needs to be brought into it. I'm a developer and an investor like Mr. Eiler's. Last subdivision I did, I spent $1.7 million on infrastructure that became city property. It made homes for 48 families in the city of Fayetteville. Now, I do residential, not apartments or commercial. One thing I'll say is I'm not against commercial development. I'm all for it. And there is a developer, in my opinion, that's doing it correctly in Fayetteville. And an example is West and Lafayette. That development is close to campus. It's within walking distance. The developer's going up. He's building it in an area that is already pretty much all commercial. The students can walk to restaurants. He's not impacting a residential area. His other development is replacing an existing apartment complex. I know this borders on residences, and the people that live close to it are not too thrilled about it. And if I lived there, I probably wouldn't be too thrilled about it either, but it's kind of like if you know it's there and you buy property next to it, well, you know it's there. I've experienced the same thing that John has on Lawrence Circle. In fact, I was standing out on my front porch and witnessed the avalanche that the people lost control and went up on the sidewalk. And if that had been a couple walking instead of a trash can, believe me, they would be dead. That is the scary part about it. And I see other incidents of reckless driving up and down the side, the streets all the time, and we have a lot of people that walk. A lot of them walk out in the street on Lawrence Circle because the sidewalks are old and uneven. They're dangerous to walk on. My sister fell, 7 stitches in her head by walking on the sidewalks. This is, something that we really have got to consider and think about. Passing this tonight, the only winners are going to be is the people selling the property, and the University of Arkansas is going to have some housing. The house to the west of me twice has had more than 3 unrelated people living in it. Both times I've called the city code compliance. Both times they have been very prompt in acting and have done an excellent job in taking care of the situation. They did it in a very professional manner and in a short time. So, it can be done. What it takes is the resident getting involved with the city. You can't just kind of call and go away. The first time I called the city, they did their inspection and everything and couldn't really get enough evidence, so they closed the case. When it became obvious there were still 4 people living there, I called back, and they came back, followed it up, and they were able to get rid of the 4 people. Excuse me, I take some medication that really drives me out.
It's fine.
So there are commercial developers out there that want to do the right thing and want to build apartments and that, are in the right place, and they do want to preserve residences. But not all developers want to do that. So I ask you to please help us citizens, protect us, and help us by keeping the ordinances. We've had the 3 in 1 house unrelated, I believe, for 12 years, if I'm not mistaken. That ordinance has been in place for 12 years, and it's served us extremely well, very well. So before we go to 5 unrelated, let's study it. Let's table it. It's not going to hurt anything to do that. If anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Butch. Okay, who would be next?
Hey everybody, I'm Shirley Lucas. I wasn't really going to talk tonight. I just came to support the neighborhood. But a couple of things have been mentioned, which makes me want to say something. I don't know, but I believe this is the first time an ordinance was brought forward for one project. Maybe I'm wrong, but I know we have amendments and variances and everything, but to actually change an ordinance for a project, I couldn't remember when that had been done before. As to enforcement, this has been here on the books. This has been here since I've been on the council. And I know when we first got it on the an ordinance that 3 people in a house. Everybody was really calling and saying, this house has so many, this house, I know I did. And people would call me and I would report it. But nothing could be done because the code compliance people only work till 5 o'clock. And these people don't get home until 7 or 8 o'clock. So there was no way to prove that there is more than 3 in there. So people just got tired of calling. I know I didn't. I quit calling. My husband quit calling because nothing could be done. And also, people were afraid of reprisal. The only time we call now is when it gets real noisy at 2 o'clock in the morning, and then we call, and the police are wonderful. But we have had pop bottle rockets shot into our yard at 2 o'clock in the morning just because they know we have reported them. So don't go by just the numbers. Please understand that enforcement is a problem, and it's not the code compliance's fault. There is just not any way to prove how many people are living there. The other night, we get along fine with our students, but I'm not going to complain about how many people are there anymore because, as I said, nothing can do. But the other night, there must have been at least 10 cars in a house across the street from us. Now, these people are real nice, and they were having a party. But if they had gone past the hour, we would have reported them. But they didn't. They quit at the right time. But there's more than 3 people live in that house, I feel certain. But there's no way for me to prove it. There's no way for code compliance to prove it. So I hate to see you increase the number when nothing can be done about what we have now. And again, people don't want to call because they're afraid of reprisal. A lady behind me who lived next door to a family, we decided it was a fraternity, but she was afraid to call. And I said, call me and I will call. And she did that a couple of times. But that's the ones that sent the pop bottle rockets to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sure. Mark?
Ms. Lucas, I know that you were on City Council during the time when there was a great deal of development, and you also were here when there were a considerable number of PZDs that came through, and this is specifically looking at a PZD change.
Yes, I realize that.
And so I'm wondering if you can help explain the issue. Some people are saying, well, since it's a PZD, it's not that critical. But if I'm hearing you right, you think it is that critical even though it is a PZD process?
Absolutely. This is going to be a development.
Explain from your experience why this would be critical even though it is a PZD situation. Because most of us were not on City Council at the time.
The idea of a PZD, to me, was that we would know what was going in there. Okay? And the neighborhood would know what is going in there. That seemed to me to be what a PZD was and why it was helpful. And so that's what bothers me about 5 bedrooms in a PZD, which allows 5 unrelated people. Does that answer your question?
Well, it does to a degree, yes. I understand what you're saying. So there is still the concern. So I appreciate that you helped with that. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Mayor, can I ask Shirley?
Sure, Bobby.
Shirley, do you think it would be of any help if you talked about code compliance leaves at 5 o'clock, since the city sets the hours of people, if it were felt that there were a need to schedule somebody else on a different shift? Do you think that would be helpful if there were somebody that worked different hours that was there after 5, or somebody say before 8 in the morning to look at these things?
Well, I don't know if it would be cost effective, Bobby. I requested that, but they said...
I'm not saying work overtime, I'm just saying just change their shift so they would report at a different time.
You mean the code compliance people work at different times?
On a test basis, perhaps.
On a what?
Test basis,
okay.
perhaps.
I don't know, because after 5 o'clock, I understand it's overtime, but if the shift was changed, it wouldn't be. But would they have enough to do
That's
during
why I
that
said-
shift.
That's why I don't know. I just-
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley.
Nice to see you, Shirley.
Yes, very nice to see you, Shirley. Well, it's nice to see all of you tonight. Yes, Paul.
Good evening. My name is Paula Marinoni, and I'm the broker for the Marinoni property and part owner. And I wanted to address a few things this evening. One, there has been implication that aldermen were doing this just for me and just for our property. And I want to clarify that before this, I didn't know Rhonda Adams at all. I have not been very involved in city activity, city meetings for about the last 5 years. And I had never talked to her before, and she is not doing this for me personally. Matthew Petty is not doing this for me or for our family. I'm not real sure, Matthew, if we've ever really agreed on anything before. It's not like, you know, we're big buds and, you know, like back to the day of the good old boy or whatever. I mean, that's ridiculous. What happened was we have a piece of property that we love very much. And I approached the Sang neighborhoods 2 years ago and said, we respect you as neighbors. We've always tried to be good neighbors. I've always worked with neighborhood groups going back to 1996. For 12 years, I helped neighborhoods organize and help to address issues. And so part of this is, you know, look who is bringing this forward. I was real excited at that meeting 2 years ago, telling them all the things we wanted to do. That is a big piece of property over there, and we feel a big responsibility to have it be something nice for Fayetteville. We could have sold that 200 times, pieces of it, and it would look like 6th Street. It would look like what's happening out Weddington. It would look like Steel Crossing. What we want is something that will be meaningful for the city. Recently, a couple years ago, I guess, we offered 10 acres for the Walton Arts Center. Nobody threw a fit about that. That's high density. And we are looking at doing something, what I told them in this meeting 2 years ago, something that's synergistic, something that where it would open up to their neighborhood through the Heckathorn property with sidewalks and trails and restaurants that they could walk to and a grocery store maybe, or, you know, whatever is over there. It would at least be a place where they could go walk, because what I told them at the time is you're landlocked. You can walk 10 minutes and you've got to turn around and go back, and half the neighborhood doesn't even have curb and gutter, let alone sidewalks. So I was really excited about this, and that's what I've been working on. At the end of that meeting, I had a flip chart and I flipped it and I said, okay, tell me what you want, because I'll call people. And they said Whole Foods. Well, I called Whole Foods, and I called other people on that list. And the problem is, with the economy, not everybody is doing anything right now, especially in commercial. The city needs that land to develop. It needs the commercial component of it to develop because it needs the sales tax for our fire, for our police, for your basic functioning of the city, to hire code compliance officers. Okay? We could maybe come up with a few bucks out of that. There'd be enough. But what I showed people 2 years ago is, in order for it to be synergistic, we have to have a residential component. And we never wanted multifamily. But right now, condos aren't going to be happening for a long time. So the only option we have is multifamily. And so then here this came along because of the increase in the student population. This new cottage-style development, we, Fayetteville, hit a level where now all these national companies are coming here. And I'm sure they're looking at other properties too, not just ours. We just happen to have several. And the fifth person is to offset the low density and the high amenities. It's like a resort-style living project. It's the nicest thing I've ever seen. In probably 150 to 200 student housing people from all over the country that have approached us and said that site would be perfect. And I was really excited about it. But the thing I was most excited about, having worked with the neighborhoods and having worked myself on that 3-person ordinance back when we did it, and seeing that it's really hard to enforce it because they sneak, is that if you give them a whole community where they can live with their friends legally, and there is professional on-site management, that is key, and they also make an arrangement with police officers, off-duty police officers, to live there and to be on duty with them at certain times, which helps alleviate calls to the police department, which are going to happen no matter what it is. And so I saw this as really the only real possible, not a solution, but a great big Band-Aid for getting all these students who are living illegally in neighborhoods another place to go. If they had a resort-style community, if they had a pool, if they had a movie theater, why would they want to live in somebody's neighborhood? So it could take a lot of them out of neighborhoods. That's what I was excited about. I want to thank Rhonda Adams for how professionally she has been in this. When I wrote emails to the people involved, I was trying to communicate as the city told me I needed to communicate and what I needed to get done. These companies that are coming here, most of them said that in other places they don't even have to ask. What happened was when we decided to define family and we set parameters on that, it excluded other possibilities. So this is an extension which makes possible a possibility that is happening in other major university campuses very successfully. These people know what they're doing. They do an excellent job. And I think if it came here, it would be the best student housing Fayetteville has ever seen. It is only for multifamily, this ordinance. It is only for a PZD. And that gives people the right to see what it is. I am standing here right now because the developer does not have the right to come here. And that is wrong. That we can't look at a great product that is very successful in other major universities because we don't have the line in our ordinance that says they can even come here and ask. It is important to communicate. There's been implication that I was communicating back in November and I was communicating in January. That's my job. And that's your job as alderman, to listen to your constituents. That if I call and I have a question, how do you do this? So, and Rhonda, when I met with Rhonda and she said that she would do this, not for our property, but because someone couldn't come here and ask, that was wrong and that needed to be fixed. Now, there are a number of things that this has brought to light, and that's a good thing. One of them is the 3 unrelated that we currently have on the books and the difficulty in enforcing that. That is very real. That needs to be addressed. Over here, separately, that is not this issue. If you want to stop this and stop these people from being able to come here, it's like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. No, we don't want to hear it. Go away. Okay? This needs to be fixed. The 3 unrelated. People have gotten worn out. They don't even call. They don't know who to call. All of that can be addressed, and it can be greatly improved. And I think it will be further greatly improved with them having a whole community where they can live together, 5 in a unit if they want to legally. The next thing that was misunderstood is we're going to move 5 people in next door to somebody. That is not correct. It is for multifamily PZD only. And with that PZD process, you can look at it. That was the reason that staff wanted this to be a PZD, because it's new, that the city council would have the opportunity to look at it. And that's why you're all elected, so that you can look at it and go, yes, I understand this. This is really nice. And I think that's what you'll be saying. The next issue is that we need to communicate with the University of Arkansas. That's always been an issue. It is always going to be an issue. It is a real issue, but it is not this issue. This issue is, can they come here and ask? I would also have to point out, if you haven't noticed, that, saying that they haven't had enough time, that this is being rushed through. It has been, this is the 5th city council meeting. It has been to 3 Ward 4 meetings, 2 Council of Neighborhood meetings. It is not being rushed through. It is being attempted to stall it, to stop it. The people who are coming forward are primarily the property owners to the east of us, whatever neighborhood that is. There's a number of neighborhoods there that are unique. Only 1 person of all the people so far that have spoken tonight were from someplace else in the city. There are at least 60 neighborhoods in this city. If this was an issue for anyone other than these people who it appears that they just do not want our property to develop, then they would have been here and they would have been in other meetings. Our property line on the east side is about 2,300 linear feet. Of that, a big chunk of it in the middle is the Heckathorn property where there's nothing. Over here, you have Lauren Circle, which is a big horseshoe. So I'm scratching my head a little bit as to how they think that's going to create extra traffic on Lauren Circle and bringing up about the child that was almost run over and stuff. They're not going to be driving through Lauren Circle. Then over here, there's another group of houses. All of it is like 1960s, 1970s houses, the properties that are west of Sang. In Lauren Circle, there are 5 houses that back up to our property. 2 of those are rentals. Over here, on the other side of the Heckathorn property, there are 3 properties, houses, that back up to our property, and all 3 of those are rentals. This neighborhood that is west of Sang is rapidly becoming a rental neighborhood. The property values have gone down like $30 a square foot in the last 3 years, but you'd say all properties everywhere are going down. The difference is this price category, coupled with the age of the structure, when you can go and pay the same money and get a brand new house on the west side of town, coupled with its close proximity to campus, it is rapidly becoming a rental neighborhood. I looked at sales in the last 6 years. Sales from 2006 to 2009, there were 10 properties that sold, and 2 of those went to rentals. They were purchased for rentals. They were all owner-occupied when they sold. The properties that sold, from 2009 to 2012, there were 8 properties, and I believe there were 2 of them that were purchased for owner-occupied. The rest were all rentals. So I am willing to overlook how we have been treated and want to continue in the future to work with the neighborhoods, because I lived in Kansas City on the Country Club Plaza where we walked to everything. And there was lots of traffic, but we'd look at the traffic and go, ha ha, we live here. We get to walk. And if there's going to be things on our property that are worth going to, they're going to be happy about that, and that will increase property values. When they can't do it themselves, they can't increase their property values, but we can. But in order to do that, we have to have a residential component. You've looked at what you can do by right. There's been a lot of discussion about that. By right, in Fayetteville, about anybody who wants to do anything can come here and go somewhere within our current zoning. There is an appropriate place for them. They can go out here in the industrial park, they can go over here, they can be close to the university. In this situation, there is no right to come here, to stand here at this podium tonight and even ask. And that is what we're addressing. If the neighbors think, oh, we can just stall this forever, if we can, let's protest, let's, whatever, we'll just say, forget it. We tried to do something nice, and just forget it, and we will probably turn right around and apply for just straight up multifamily. And Fayetteville will be losing an opportunity to bump up our product to a level that Arkansas, not just this area, Arkansas has never seen. And I could tell you the whole history of multifamily in Arkansas. Bobby's going, oh my God, oh my God. I could. I could go on community access television right now and do a whole hour-long show. And it's really interesting, the whole history of multifamily in Fayetteville. But that's not what we're here to talk about. It is, can someone come here and ask? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, who would be next?
My name is Tim Kautzer. I live just adjacent to Lawrence Circle at 524 North Sang. I've been an owner-occupant there on Sang Avenue for over 30 years. Excuse me. I've noticed that on either side of me, for the next 4 houses, I think in either direction, they are not rental, they are owner-occupant. There is something about owner occupancy that mortgage companies and others recognize as having a vital interest in the property and a vital interest in the participation of the neighborhood, which is different in character from rental or seasonal rentals, student housing. We have seen a continuation of single-family residences in our neighborhood. To the other side of us, there's $1 million homes. A very short distance from where I live, the Adams built a beautiful new home, single-family residence. It has continued to be a single-family neighborhood. There has been an encroachment, that is true, and the city saw fit to put in a speed bump in order to help preserve the single-family character, peace, safety, and tranquility of our neighborhood. This project, for anyone who's lived on Sang Avenue as I have, in excess of 30 years, is aware of the difficulty of moving traffic on Sang Avenue, North Sang Avenue. That is the reason I suspect that the city never saw fit to connect North Sang Avenue with the rest of North Sang Avenue. It never saw fit to make a continuation of Maple and make a connection because it was not feasible and it did not seem to be a feasible thing to do, although except for the nature of the street, its twists and turns, is posted in some places at an advised speed limit of 10 miles an hour. Now, if you hope to force in excess of 4,000 additional vehicles down that road, anybody that's lived on the street, as long as I have, recognizes that there are cars in the ditch when it snows on a repeated basis. This morning, the police department, Fayetteville Police Department, was doing a very busy business, 2 motorcycle police officers on Sang Avenue issuing speeding tickets. Many people can notice if they wish to take the interest. I'm not sure how to facilitate accomplishing it. Many of the speeders, it's observable to those who live there, are students. The speed bumps has not curtailed speeding to the extent that it needs to. To push 4,000 more cars down that street when they are not preserving the peace, safety, and tranquility of the traffic as it now exists does not seem to me a reasonable proposal. Those are my chief, concerns and interests, and I just joined the chorus of all the other interests that have been mentioned to you before.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. My name is Stephen Kay. I live at 2075 Archer in the Waterman Woods subdivision. I want to say that after listening to Ms. Marinoni's description, I found it in some ways very intriguing in that she had some good ideas and some good plans. But though I disagree with the 5-person rule, the problem with what she was speculating about with these PZDs is the what ifs. And she had a lot of them. What if you have proper management? You get extra police officers to watch the grounds. You have good management that are going to keep up the properties. Those are some big what ifs that we've already seen in this town when it comes to the management of real estate and real property developments. This isn't just about the Marinoni property. This is about PZDs allowing 5 people to live all over this town. Right now, within my neighborhood, besides the Marinoni property, you go up the hill, and they're talking about another PZD on a 2.8 acre stretch with the 210 units that could, if this passes, have potentially 5 bedrooms per unit up there. Again, on the surface, it doesn't sound like that bad of an idea until you start thinking of all the what ifs. What if the crime rate goes up? Who's going to get hurt? The kids that get to move out when they find out that their apartment's getting broken into on a regular basis? Or me, the homeowner that has a $400,000 and some odd mortgage on a beautiful home that I can't sell now because the crime rate's so high in my end of town? These PZDs seemed like an easy idea to say, let's allow something that we weren't allowing before. But let's not forget there are some reasons why we did not allow these things to happen before. This city came to a decision many years ago about what the definition of family was and why development should be the way it is. And by allowing a PZD to take, for instance, at the top of the hill, an area of land that should have maybe 88 units and now have 210 units, that's a big change. And it's a big population density change. It's a traffic issue. And we have not started to examine repercussions of all of these issues. It's traffic, it's crime, it's the what ifs of people in schools and crime going up. And when the property owners when the kids no longer find these to be the new cool hip places to live, and the landlords are starting to drop their prices down, and who's going to start moving in then? And when the trees stop getting trimmed and the grass starts getting a little bit taller and things need to be repaired about 10 years down the line, what then? We cannot make a change like this in such a quick time, being so short-sighted as to all the what-ifs that can happen. They say, well, they can't come here to make this. They don't even have the right. By right, they can't come here. I don't have a problem with that. This city determined a long time ago that there are certain things that we wanted to have in our town and certain things we didn't. We don't want 5 people per unit in this town. That is something that this city determined a long time ago. Why are we backpedaling now to say, okay, let's do it? I've not seen, there are a lot of developments that have gone in all over this town. I don't see that problem there. And as Ms. Marinoni talked about her property, I wouldn't be as concerned if a Lindsay development went in over there. It's, they manage their properties, they landscape it, they gate it, they keep patrolling on it, they have security guards. They're a pretty renowned landlord, I believe, and they've done some great things in some areas. But you see, those are still the what ifs. What the problem is, though, now you put 5 people per unit in all these things. And the redevelopment of our town with 5 people per unit, that's a lot of people living in a short amount of space. And I think that our city is not prepared for the crime rate increase, for the amount of security that's going to need to be taking place. And when these landlords fail to provide that, because what it really comes down to, as most of these emails that we've been given in the FOIA show, is that this isn't about the development of Fayetteville and what's in the best interest of the community and the people that live here and love our town. It's what's in the best interest of the bottom dollar to the landowners who want to sell the property for millions of dollars and the developers who want to put in, I would say, I guess, high-end cottages at $500 a bedroom for students. I think those are the ones that are profiting. It's not going to be the students, and it's certainly not going to be us landowners in this town. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else?
Hello, thank you for hearing us. My name is Candace Hoggett. I am a resident on the corner of Archer and Saying. My fence is right next to the speed bump. So I get to see everyone going by and slowing down or not slowing down. I'm asking you, in addition to being a homeowner on Saying and Archer, I also have rental property throughout the city, so I do understand the complexities of being a landlord and dealing with tenants, and I believe as a landlord it's important that you follow the rules that are ordinance of the city, and that's a responsibility of each landlord. And I just wanted to say that I can see it both sides. I want to make money and pay my mortgage, but I also want to keep my houses rented. But I have a responsibility to the people that are the rental properties next to me and the homeowners that don't have rental properties. I ask that you delay this decision for more consideration along with my other neighbors. I think we need to take a little bit more time with reviewing and studying of what it'll affect the neighborhood. Mrs. Marinoni has a right, as all of us do, to develop her property, but we do live in a city where we have to make concessions, and we have to discuss, and I believe that's what we need further. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, who else? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council. Okie dokie. And so.
I guess I'll go first. I know we all probably have comments, but I don't mind going first. I have a couple points to make, but first I really would like to thank everybody who's participated in this discourse in a civil manner. I've heard some stories about other meetings or about things that have happened after meetings that frankly are disappointing for what I expect out of Fayetteville, so I really appreciate everyone who's participated civilly. On the idea that there needs to be more research, particularly whenever it comes to town and gown relationships. On that point, the town and gown part, I couldn't agree more. Lots of other cities have something called a university overlay district. It's something I've been thinking about for a couple months now. It's something I think Fayetteville, it's probably time's about right for Fayetteville to start thinking about a university overlay district. And it's something I'll probably campaign on this year. So I think that's a good point. But the general point that more research is needed, to be quite frank, I think it is, since the request is sincere on some parts, but on other parts I think it's just a request or a strategy to kill this, a death by 1,000 days strategy, if you will. I think that I've done some research, and I don't know how much research others have done, but in many communities across the country, very similar to Fayetteville, with colleges and similar growth issues, similar growth rates, there is no definition of family. That's something unique that Fayetteville has. I think it's good that we have a restriction on the number of unrelated persons that can live in a location, even as I propose that it be tweaked. I wouldn't propose that it be eliminated. When you look at other towns, and when you look at Fayetteville, I think we saw some of this tonight. There are two things that people argue about a lot, or two sides, I guess, in the way development happens. High density and low density. And you either like one, or you like the other, or you think one should happen in one place and one should happen in another place. But demographics are changing. What people my age and what people that are about to come into their purchasing power want is different than what people who are older want. And not everybody wants to live in an apartment, and not everybody wants to live in a house alone or has a family to start. So you have this low density and this high density kind of convention. And in the middle, it's called the missing middle when people talk about it. The middle density. And what does it look like? Well, it looks like duplexes and fourplexes. It looks like manor houses, which, by the way, this email we were given is only the second time in my life I've seen the word manor house. I've only seen it in other kind of wonky articles about urban planning, about what this missing middle is. And I think this is an opportunity to help create that missing middle, to reach that new developing market that the younger demographic wants. I honestly believe that this is the best thing for Fayetteville. And you know, when a property owner gets up here and says that we've never agreed on anything, I can tell you it's pretty much right. I came to this independently and thought about it a lot. Urban planning is my passion, and looking at other communities, helping the missing middle develop in this way is vital for not having monocultures, for lack of a better word, in the city. And I got a few emails today accusing us of creating an urban monoculture by passing this, and I don't really think that I think if you're going to use that word, you need to really understand what it is. A monoculture is quarantining students on the hill. A monoculture is setting up a property owners association and stipulating that no one can rent their homes in that area, or buying a street back from the city and gating it. That's what a monoculture is. And you're free to do that if you want. You can rally your property owners together on your street and prevent anyone from renting there. But you don't have the right to say that all students have to be quarantined on the hill, even if there are some really bad apples out there. On the point of traffic, let's use one of the things talked about tonight as an example. The Cleveland Hall proposal, 220 units according to the numbers we heard tonight. Okay, let's just use round numbers and say that means 500 cars, okay? Or at least 500 parking spaces. What if we built 220 units out past Double Springs Road? Well, they're going to have to take more vehicular trips because they can't walk anywhere. You're going to have the same number of cars, but they're going to be on the road more often, driving on the same streets, creating more of a problem than they would if you put them downtown or next to the university or close to what they needed to be close to. So we've got that many people moving here anyway, and this is a question of how do we locate them in an efficient manner, not how do we locate them using the exact same techniques we've done for the past 40 or 50 years. The last point I want to talk about is the enforcement problem. I think it's really interesting that we have people say that we have an enforcement problem, but every time they've contacted the city, it's been resolved timely. Or that they've known about problems for a long time, but it wasn't until they heard about this proposal that they contacted the city, and now they're waiting to see what happens, and their responses so far have been timely. I want to let some of the members of the Ordinance Review Committee talk about that point a little bit more, because we did discuss it in detail at a meeting and got some good numbers from city and historical enforcement data. But what I think is really important to remember for this proposal, and the reason the PZD part is important, and we talk about these what ifs. Well, if we were to do this with any other zoning ordinance, in any other zoning district, and make this a use by right, then we wouldn't be able to make any stipulations as a council. So now if this passes, it comes through as a PZD, and we get to say, okay, if we're going to let you have 5 bedrooms per unit, then you have to have a management team and a management practice with these qualities. We could even go so far as to say you have to submit to an audit. That's the power the PZD has. That's the level of enforcement we can go to with the PZD that we can't with other zoning districts. And that's something I don't think anybody's talked about yet, is the different quality and the new means available to the city through a PZD for enforcement that aren't available with other zoning districts. I think that's an important point. Basically, I think that this is an important means to handle the growth we can expect in the city. 76,000 people over about the next 30 years are going to live here. 76,000 new people. That's equal to what we have today. I don't think most of us realize the magnitude of the changes that is going to require for us to preserve any sense of quality of life that we have now. That's it.
Okay. Sarah.
Actually, I have some clarification questions first, so I would like to discuss the ordinance review discussion a little bit and just have some questions about it, because this is related to the feeling of like the self-efficacy and the effect that people have in reporting something, and then the feeling that they have that they can continue to that and not have repercussions. And I can tell you, I have been one to try to report something before I was on the council over and over, and it's not, and I'm totally willing, and people probably get tired of me, but it's that fear of repercussion, and then also really an unclear metric for success. And that's my question, and I totally work with the code enforcement. I think they do go through all the things that they're supposed to and look at things and go out and they do the process. What I'm suggesting is I want to know what is the metric that defines success. And so I was wondering what that was, and if maybe Jeremy or Kit, or if you can tell, like, what is it? Is it reaching it back out to the citizen and saying, how are you feeling about this situation, or how does that work?
Jeremy Pate, I think ultimately the metric is compliance. We're always in the business of compliance. So if we investigate, what I presented to the Ordinance Review Committee on March 7th, 2011, we had 22 complaints about over-occupancy. 14 of those we investigated, and there was no evidence that we could find of any kind of violation. So we're not going to keep a case open if we, after 3 visits at different times of the day over a period of a couple of weeks, we find no evidence of violation. It is during business hours, obviously, as someone mentioned before. Yeah. We have made shifts to our shifts. We come in at 7:30. Our code officers do, to be able to do things like that. But 14 of those, so a good proportion of those, we find no evidence of a violation. Those that we do find evidence of a violation, we do go through that process with both code compliance and our planning team, which is following up with the property owner. Sometimes it's a simple call, or it has to progress to a violation letter. We received one today that a woman lives there with her 3 adult children. They all have cars. That's a perfectly legal and valid arrangement. And so we resolved that case because it was something that was a legal remedy. Others we do have to follow up on with violation letters to get compliance. And sometimes, as I mentioned, we did a 30, 60, 90 day, more than 90 day kind of analysis at the Ordinance Review Committee, and sometimes it does take longer than we'd like. But fortunately, the majority of those are within 30 days that we can get those resolved. When we say resolved, we mean that property then after multiple inspections after the fact, we are finding it in compliance.
Okay, so thank you. And that's what I mean. I think that there's some kind of disconnect, and I don't know if it's people get tired of calling repeatedly. and there is a resolved level, but then there's a new tenant or something, and it's not just one house, it's multiple. So it's just, I get calls a lot, and then I report it, and that works fine. It's just there's some kind of perception that people get tired of reporting the nuisances, and I'm not sure. I think that there's work that needs to be done on just the communication between the city efforts to enforce it and follow up with the neighbors, and more communication about how it's been resolved and what those outcomes are. And I'm totally willing to help with this in whatever way I can, and I think it is an important issue, and it does relate to this topic because I think it was Shirley that mentioned, if we're having trouble with issues in neighborhoods with the number that we have right now, it seems risky, essentially, for the integrity of the neighborhood to add numbers to that. And that doesn't mean that the number of people is actually an issue. It's the behaviors that come with that. And we have not, just the fact that people are having this conversation and are emotional about it tells us that there are some real issues that we need as a community really be looking at. Is where's the breakdown here? And I don't know, I think everybody feels like they're going through what they need to go through, but there is a need to really examine what's the system, what is the breakdown of some kind of communication. So with that, I would like to make a couple of comments, and that is, one, I really do think that this is about being strategic in how we approach the growing number of people in our community. And I completely agree that people are coming, and that's awesome. We have a fantastic community, and we need to be strategic about that. I agree that they should live close to the center of town. I agree that actually, I don't even mind that there would be more people in a house. I just want us as a community to be ready for that. And I don't think we are. I don't think we have clarity in the communication and enforcement. I don't think we have enough traffic calming. I don't think we have enough connectivity in the roads and stop signs and speed signs and traffic signs. I think we don't have a town and gown relationship with a stakeholder relationship where we meet regularly and have representatives on that committee and we are discussing these issues. I think we need an overlay district that is within the edges, not just Ward 4, Ward 2, on the edge of Ward 1. I think we need more opportunities for mass transit in those areas that we don't have, more bus stops. I think we need more education about how do you complain. On the website right now it says community services or citizen concerns, and that's good, but I want a big button that says I have a complaint, and you can click it and anonymously provide a complaint. It's just make it so obvious about how to have a complaint, and then have a follow-up list on how your complaint was. It could be all online, and I think we're getting there, but I just don't think we're quite there and ready to allow more density. And the thing that has kind of put me over the edge on this is that development at the top of Cleveland. If this passes, they could put 5 people per unit in that 2 acres, and in a built apartment style building. And although I think that that's pretty cool, and a lot of places are doing that, our little nook is not ready for that. We don't have the traffic issue. We don't have the amount of. We just can't handle all those cars, and we don't have the movement of people. We're just not ready for that area on Hall and Weddington, at the Garland intersection, at the Hall intersection, at the Razorback intersection, at the Oliver intersection. We need a stop sign. So there's just pressure, and we're not ready for it. And I feel like this is okay, but I would like us to I would actually like us to consider tabling it indefinitely, not kill it, because I think it should come back when we have a town and gown workforce and we have a more traffic calming around the university and around town, and have a real plan for how we're dealing with all these new students that I haven't really seen specifically. So that's what I would like to bring up.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, I would like to endorse what Councilman Lewis has said in her comments. I have similar notes. I do think that we are representative of the people in our community, and to say that this was only one neighborhood that has a concern is a gross misconception. I've received numerous bits of correspondence throughout the city, and no one generally supports this, and it's a lot of times a misunderstanding. But that doesn't mean that they're, the reason they don't support it is invalid. It is extremely valid. And I accept the validity of the arguments that were presented this evening as a reason not to move forward at this time on this issue. We must have cooperation. 2 years ago, I believe, we had something known as the Fayetteville Forward Weekend, and we all were talking about collaborative working together with the university and the business community and the government. And many of us that participated left with a dream for what Fayetteville would be in the future. And I think that we're holding on to that dream, and that's why we have the concern this evening. In that workshop that we all attended, if you had the opportunity, we talked about building consensus. When this issue came up 8-10 weeks ago, I believe I was the only one that mentioned this might be contentious, because I was active in a neighborhood across the street from the university as a neighborhood association president when it was discussed, and it was a contentious issue. It is still a contentious issue. What I'm looking for is a unified and progressive community to build consensus and to handle the town and gown issue that we're facing with growth here in our community. We do have in place currently in our government very good avenues to build this consensus. We have the FFEAC, which as City Council I'm on. We could develop a group with town and gown. We already have representatives on the FFEAC so that we could put this together and move forward with pride and to have the dream that we all can embrace. That's what we talked about 2 years ago, and I'm just that darn idealistic that I have that dream still with me today. And that's what I see these neighbors have, and that's what I see with individuals. In our community, we have a very, very vocal community. I have friends throughout Arkansas that sometimes kid me about the way that everyone has an opinion in our town. And you know what? I hold that as a badge of honor, and thank you for being that type of community. And let's embrace it and work together. We have the FFEAC, we have the Fayetteville Council of Neighborhoods. Paula was very instrumental on this, and it's a wonderful way that neighborhoods can discuss resolution of problems. As a leader in that in the years past, one of the most prevalent problems that we hear year after year is overoccupation of residential units. And yet to date, we have not built consensus on how to resolve this issue. So if we can't resolve it with 3, how can we resolve it with 5? I don't think that we're moving forward in a progressive nature. So I think that there has to be a U of A dialogue. There has to be real facts, not just conjecture. I believe that Ms. Daniel is a research librarian at the university, and I respect the research that she has done on this issue. Thank you, Ms. Daniels. I respect Matthew because I know that he is one to research issues very well, and he is a colleague that I respect his research. I also am a scientist, and I've done research on this. There is a lot of information that we could compile to come up with a consensus and to work together as we move forward in handling the expansive growth of the university community here in our wonderful city. So basically what I'm saying, let's promote collaboration. It's not that I'm against 5 or 4 or 5. I don't think that we're there yet, and I don't think that we have a collaborative effort, and I don't think that we've handled the issues. And if it's a perceived issue, it's an issue. If it's a real issue, it's an issue. I live across the street from the university. To me, it is very real. And I only live across the street, a block, from big developments that, against the wishes of some of my neighbors, I endorse, because we currently have here in Fayetteville a downtown district where we can have high density. Against the wishes of my neighbors, I did support 555 Maple because it is appropriate. We had charrettes where the citizens participated to talk about what they wanted downtown, and this is what came from that. We have not had the same type of participation when we're talking about the development of high-density residential, single-family residential units of 5 outside this area. And I think it's time to move forward in a responsible manner and listen to all of the people that have a concern, and also to exchange information so there's a better understanding and less confusion about how a PZ is handled. There is no restriction on how small a PZD can be. Anyone can move forward with a PZD. I could get 2 houses in my neighborhood, the Wilson Park neighborhood, and maybe there's some property there, and I could come forward with a PZD. Doesn't mean that it's going to make it. It doesn't mean it's not going to make it. What it does, it brings politics into the issue. And I think rather than bringing politics into the issue, we need to have standards, and we need to have an understanding, and we need to have a consensus. There's been a mention that this is going to be a resort community for students. Now, I don't know about you, but I was a student. When I was a student, I wasn't heading off to Tibet to be in a resort, to be centered, and to find tranquility. I was on my way to Jamaica, to Negril, to a resort known as hedonism. And I think that this is more the, I'm sorry, maybe I'm out of touch. I'm old. That is the type, whenever someone says they're developing a student resort, I can't help but imagine that this encourages that type of community. And I endorse that. That's part of the university development of a young adult. I'm not going to prevent anyone from having fun. I just don't necessarily think that that's a way that I would support 5 individuals in a residential unit. Like I said, we do have groups where we can move forward with this, and that's what I would hope that we would do. Oh gosh, I have a lot. I tried to make points with everyone that came up. We do need real information, and I think Kathy Deck, with the information that Ms. Daniels brought forward, did talk about the importance of being that we don't outgrow ourselves. Because what happens, and there's a specific situation that I can't help but think of. I was a student at the university in the late 70s with the development of Betty Joe and a Florine area over on the Giles Addition. And it was quite la-di-da. If your family could afford to buy a duplex with 6 units, you could buy a duplex out on Betty Joe and be off campus and have your independence, and it would pay for itself while you were in school. I was thinking, how many parties did I go to out there? How many individuals did their family buy this? And what has happened in the meantime? You know, I think of my good friends Karen and Kirby and David and Tracy and Kay. Their parents all bought duplexes on Betty Joe. Within 5 years, then they were absentee landlords. And it was a great investment for these individuals. But was it great for Betty Joe? I think that we know that that is a high crime area. Was it great for Florine or the Giles Addition? That was where duplexes of 6 bedrooms came in, similar development, and we developed basically a very rough activity as that aged because the infrastructure did not keep up with it and we didn't plan. Let's plan and let's move forward and have a plan of action in place so that we can make sure that we can handle the concerns of these individuals and those that have reached me before this meeting this evening. So I do think that there is a valid point of crime. Having served on the Housing Authority for 8 years before, there was so much information that was sent my way on management of low-income housing and high density, and also ghetto development. And we do not want to be a city that is not prepared, because what causes ghetto development is absentee landlords that no longer take pride in their property, and one thing leads to another, and then an area becomes decay. At the same time, we can see this in the history of Fayetteville. The Wilson Park area, back in the late 70s, was filled with absentee landlords. Property values were plummeting. And it wasn't until later that there was a second wave of interest that homeowners came in and turned those homes back into single resident type homes. I was one of those people. The house that I live in now is the historic Melton home. But when I was in college, it was known as the SAE Annex. It was an animal house. It was behind the Pi-Fi house. But again, you have to look at cycles, and we've got to be prepared and plan for the cycles of growth, decay, and historic preservation. So, we certainly have that capacity with our community here to move forward in that manner, but we have to take it step by step. I think that answers my main issues. I would also like to see this tabled indefinitely. It's probably not going to be a very popular opinion this evening because we've talked about this for 8 weeks. But what we've done is we've had contention for 8 to 10 weeks. We have not worked as a community. We have not worked for our dream, and we have not worked collaboratively. And I personally would like to embrace this and move forward, offer anyone to come here and build a wonderful upscale subdivision of some sort to handle these student needs, but we're simply not ready for it. And so I will be voting against this, and I would like to suggest we table it indefinitely and come up with a collaborative plan.
Brenda, you had a question?
I just had a follow-up question to something that Sarah mentioned about the Cleveland project. Did I understand you to say that it could have 5 bedrooms?
Okay. So the developer presented at the Ward 4 meeting, and they are bringing forward a PZD.
They are?
Yes.
Okay.
So that would
I
give
was
them that
unaware
option.
of that. Okay.
If this passes, that would have an option. And
of course, the
that's
council would have
that's
to approve that.
That's right.
And there's rezoning issues that you have to approve on it as well.
Right, and I guess I just keep going back to the fact that we have to approve a PZD. This is not, there has been a lot of misunderstanding. People seem to think that they can just pop these up now everywhere. They can just convert their house into 5 bedrooms. Well, that's not what this is about. It is about planned zoning district, and I think we've heard quite a bit about that enough tonight. I don't have to explain that again, but these same people that have concerns about this project, potential project, that's adjacent to them, if this council does approve this amendment, then they're going to have ample opportunity to argue their points against the proposed project. And that, to me, is the time we want to hear what the issues are with the proposed a planned zoning district. I guess at this point I've not heard anything that really changes my mind about supporting this, because it does enable an opportunity that we don't have now. We had it prior to our ordinance that we passed where we limited, 3 unrelated people to a household, which hasn't been all that long ago. So I don't think we're backstepping. I think we're looking at maybe doing something a little differently, offering some opportunities, some student housing where, they can have 5 students or 5 unrelated people in a house. It doesn't have to be students. There are families that, they're extended families that are not considered unrelated and are technically not allowed. They're, the in-laws and so forth. There's one situation I know of like that, but more than 3 unrelated does not work in that situation. So, at this point, I've just not heard anything that's really changed my mind about this. As far as whether or not I'll support the planned zoning district and where they locate the housing we're talking about in relation to the existing residential community that's concerned about it, that's a different issue altogether. If it's going to create traffic problems on sign, whatever, that's something then we will consider. So, or I will. So anyway, that's all I have to say. Okay.
Adela.
Well, for me, the thing that has come out so clearly in all of this discussion is that we do have an enforcement problem. Whether it's 3 unrelated or 5 unrelated, we have an enforcement problem, and I want us to work on that. I know our city attorney came forward with one ordinance that didn't work, and that's fine. But I think there could be something that would work. I agree with Sarah completely. We have an enforcement problem, and that's what we need to look at. Ever since I've been on the council, as others have spoken, I've had people come to me with concerns about too many people, too many cars. We already have the ordinance about cars in the yard. That's already an ordinance. So we just need to work harder at enforcing, and I think that's our responsibility as a city. I will be supporting this because I think it's the right thing for the city. I think the city needs to allow people to ask. And I have faith in this council and future councils that they will look at the situation and make the right decision. And as Brenda says, look at the traffic. And as Ms. Marinoni said, just if this project doesn't go, then we can't expect that property is not ever going to develop, and it could be possibly much worse than what we're talking about tonight. So I think we have to look at this situation and think once again what is best for Fayetteville. And I will be supporting it because I think it's best for Fayetteville for a developer to be allowed to ask if he may have 5 bedrooms in a house. So that is my opinion. Thank you.
Rhonda.
So I'd like to clear up a couple of misunderstandings first. I'm not responsible for what other people write to my email inbox, and I would have given you all the emails without your FOI, and I didn't have anything to hide there. But the person who wrote to me in that email, I didn't even remember that, and you didn't find an answer back from me. I'm sure I didn't write him back. I did this when I got approached for this. When I got approached about this, it's been nearly 4 months ago since I first heard about this. And I saw it at the time when I first heard it as basically a text change, an amendment to an ordinance that we weren't going to change anything about the ordinance as it sits, an amendment that would allow somebody to ask. And I clearly found out from our city attorney and from our city administrators and from our planning department, who ask a lot of questions, that it would not allow more than 3 unrelated people to live in any existing dwelling by right, and it would not change the existing occupancy rules. What we've learned is that it definitely has brought up the issue of enforcement, but it was never intended to impact or change enforcement. That's a different issue. That's not what an ask would do. What these conversations that we've had here tonight would happen after the ask has been made. So I pledge to you all in Ward 4 to work hard to support the efforts of enforcement and to participate in anything I can do to make that better. This provides a way for property owners in our city to bring to the city a proposal. And the planning department would give us a recommendation, the commissioners would give us a recommendation, we would have input from citizens in meetings like this, and finally nothing would happen unless it was approved by the city council. Again, it does not give anyone the right to do anything but ask. And what we've heard here tonight is that people ask all the time through a PZD process. That's what a PZD process is. And I think our citizens should be able to ask, and our property owners have the right to ask for us to look at something. So I will say again, I propose this ordinance because was I sitting around home thinking, what would it be like to have 5 unrelated people in a house? No. It had to be brought to me, and I meet with people all the time who bring me ideas. And that's how it started. At a time when the university is growing, I think a new planning tool in our toolbox is good. I think I was elected to look at our current ordinances and to consider what might need to be changed. A lot of things have been changed over the last few years, and this would be a planning tool only. In closing, I'd say that, again, I saw this as a text change, an opportunity for somebody to ask, I don't know a better word to use than text, in addition to an ordinance that would allow citizens who own property in our city to come before their government and ask. And I believe that. I believe I live in a city where we have open government, and we respect the opinions of our citizens and the ideas of our citizens. It's a university town. We're in a progressive city that looks to the future and doesn't just hold on to exactly what's on the books today. And I hope the people on the council after me look to the future too. That's what we're supposed to be doing. I'm disappointed, very disappointed about some of the things that have happened in this, and that some people just don't want anything to change, just nothing to change, nothing in my backyard. But I believe that that Fayetteville is able to handle an ask from a property owner. I want to hear from property owners, and I want to respect and represent all citizens who have something they need their government to look at. Thank you.
Alderman Tenney.
If you look at the minutes from the first time we talked about this, it seems like longer, but it was however many weeks ago. My main concern was enforcement. The first thing I said was, I don't want this to create an undue problem for our enforcement, because I've heard ever since, I've lived here all my life, and I've lived in some of those houses that had too many cars in them, and I know it exists, and I know the problem is difficult. So I wanted to be more sure than I was then that this could work. And in the ordinance review, we had a great presentation by Jeremy and code enforcement talking about the process, talking about the percentages, and to Shirley Lucas's point, which is a great point, don't sometimes go by the percentages because people are sometimes scared to do it, which was your point. I agree with that, and I think we need to make it easier. Maybe the process is not as easy as it should be. I think those are things that we can work on. I think that we need to hold staff to this. If this passes and something does get developed there, and Brenda made a great point, just because we pass this doesn't mean that we pass this particular development as it comes, because I see multiple problems with that actually. But what the ordinance really means to me is there can be control from the planning commission down to the city council, and an actual way to get our arms around the inevitable growth that will be there. And for me, I may not agree 100% with what gets built in any of the places that might be impacted by this, whether it's Cleveland or whether it's the Marinoni property or whatever. But what gets built in those projects, I think we have to
leave it to the people to do what they think is best. We have to believe in the planning commission process, believe in the city council process, question it, and always do the things we're doing here. But for this particular case, allowing the ability for the developers to present something to us that may make a big difference to us moving forward as a growing, thriving, university-based community, I think is not a horrible thing. So I will support it for that reason.
Matthew, I think that you and I don't always agree on everything, but I think that I really liked your thoughts tonight and the way you delivered them. I think we're along the same lines on that, thinking out instead of for right now. There's always, I guess, going to be some reluctance to change. In 7 years, a little over 7 years that I've been on the council, I have seen over and over developments or changes come before. Not every one of them, but a great number of them. The people, the incumbents that live in the area fear change. There's very common arguments, traffic safety. And I thought we were going to miss this one tonight, but somebody finally came up with it, drainage. It's all the regulars. And I understand this. I guess if I had my ruthers, I'd rather keep things stable as changing. But you have to change and you have to grow. Before I forget about it, as far as planning, does anybody have any knowledge? Because I had a citizen ask a particular question. Have you heard or anything about any ideas of any ingress or egress off of Maple in this kind of proposed development? This particular one, I just had somebody ask me that they had heard that, and I said, well, I'll ask.
I know that Maple, a portion of Maple abuts the Marinoni property, but we haven't really seen any kind of plans for the development of that property.
Okay, thank you.
I think a portion of the north is also owned by the university too, so that may prohibit a connection to Maple at that point. I'm not aware enough of it.
Mark, I guess during the late 60s and early 70s when I was in college, we were in different places. I had been to the Grill, Jamaica, but I've also been up at some parties on Maple Street and Cleveland Street, a little north of this area, and I don't know how people would describe them today. Some of them I can remember over holiday weekends going on for 3 or 4 days. Probably wasn't the smartest thing I ever did, but had a lot of fun.
I might have been there. I don't know.
Okay, really, some decisions as a councilman are easy. Some are not so easy. Some are difficult. This decision is very difficult. However, I do have confidence that whatever comes forth is going to be heavily scrutinized by staff, planning commission, before it comes to this august body. I would hope you'd have some confidence in our current and future elected officials and staff. And once again, you're going to have the chance to come up and petition your elected officials about, yes, I like this, or no, I don't, if it comes through on a PZD. PZDs are very closely scrutinized. I don't think that the vast majority of people, if they wanted this table, they wanted table to be killed. And I speak of people that spoke, not of aldermen. I think most people would like it to go away and not to be tabled and to come back. So in looking at the future, I will support this.
Okay. So everybody's had a turn to talk. Any other comments? From the town hall meeting that we had earlier in the month, and it was, there's some issues brought up that I just want the council to know and the citizens to know that I have made contact with the Chancellor of the University. We've had contact. We have researched the town and gown, Clemson, and we're looking into that. We're looking at probably, we would put some sort of town and gown committee together probably in the next month or so, as soon as we can get everything researched. And so, and I will be meeting with the Chancellor again next week. So however this votes go, that's going to be some of the things we're going to be doing in the future. As far as enforcement goes, Jeremy, how many folks do we have to do code enforcement? Or Don?
I was going to address, I think one of the items we as staff would agree with you is that enforcement is a challenge. It wasn't until former Alderman Lucas brought forward an ordinance on the limitations on parking and Councilmember Lewis, limitations on parking, did it give us the first tool to really address over occupancy. Because while we have the ordinance, proving it in a court of law is very different than a complaint over the issues. Having citizens say that was my friends and we studied overnight, I don't live there. It's my boyfriend or girlfriend, they don't live there. It was a party, they don't live there. And being able to do that and have the documentation consistency has certainly been a challenge for staff. I might remind the council that the budget that you approved has 3 code enforcement officers for the entire city of Fayetteville. That is what we have to enforce grass, bulky items on properties that are unsightly, these issues of occupancy, parking, that move forward. And so, you know, we're trying to do it. We'll get a complaint. Just I think one of the things that came about is, and I guess the comment I would make to citizens who, you know, got mad because I made a comment at the Ordinance Review Committee meeting that some of these were perceived problems. I should have said some of these are prior historical problems to the ordinance that we first put in. We did see a decrease. We didn't see it eliminated. We saw a decrease in the ability of these because we had a new tool to address them, which was the parking item. You can see an increase in parking issues. So where we used to have, I can't remember the exact numbers, but like 26, it's now 101. There's a new item that comes forward. It's not showing in occupancy, it's showing in the parking category. But it still gave us an opportunity to address that. To set up staff times of shifts to catch things on, you know, 6 and 7 a.m. and 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 p.m., it will require additional staff to do so. It will require additional schedules, and we will have to put in place some accountability measures for management of those people at times when we have people who aren't typically here providing management support for those staff members. The mayor, Ms. Daniels' information that she gave the mayor at the town hall meeting is something that we've had Julie McQuaid, our neighborhood coordinator, researching for us to look at in terms of a committee, because I do think that there's some good best practices, and I think the 4 points that she made in her presentation as well as the town hall are 4 points that we looked at. You know, the mayor's dialogue with the chancellor about on-campus housing, this legislative ordinances that we might need in place. And what we find most of the time is that the complaints aren't necessarily related to how many people are living there, they're related to a nuisance. Too many people parking, too much noise, too much trash, too much speeding. And that comes as a result of it, but you have to have an enforcement item to do it. So we are looking at it. I mean, we're looking at Fort Collins. It was, I think, one of the locations that Donna gave us. Texas A&M was an area. Villanova, Clemson. We're in the process of reviewing these items. But I will tell you that the first thing that will help it, one, is depending on how much time you want us to do it and how you want it staffed from a hours perspective, because these aren't problems. You know, one area that I completely agree with the citizens about is these aren't problems that are easily diagnosed 8 to 5. These are before people leave to go to school or work. These are after people get home. And, you know, to Alderman Farrell's question earlier, I think, I made a note that we can look at that with Yolanda, but it's still going to be a limited amount of time that we can get to all of these items and education. We're looking at orientation on and off campus, new student orientation to try to get more involvement, but it is going to require some enforcement actions. I'll tell you, initially wasn't a fan of what was proposed just because it created the chief of staff as the hearing officer, and I'm already the most hated person in town. It needs something else to have everybody mad about. And I also think it needs to be decided by council members. I think when we're talking about these items where we want to try to move people out quickly, I think we need your policy support on that. Because the first thing we hear when we do that is one of them standing at the podium telling you we didn't give them enough notice to correct it. That we tried to get it done in 10 days or 30 days. So, you know, we're researching ideas. We've heard every one of you on enforcement. Councilmember Adams has hit us on enforcement. Parking was a great new ordinance. If we can find something to be as effective in some of these other areas, we're all for it. But we can't park policemen on every street in the city for speeding. We don't have the head count. So some of these things are just pure staffing requirements. And I will go back to what we said as staff in the very first meeting. Our advice to both the property owner, Mayor Nones, to council members who ask us, is that this wasn't something that the staff was initiating. We felt like that this had been such a contentious issue historically, it needed to be a dialogue at the council level over policy. We also believe that the mayor, I don't know a lot of people real well, but he's one I know really well. And one of the things that I knew that he would say to us is he wouldn't want to create any kind of change that would allow this request anywhere but at the council level. We wouldn't want it at a planning commission appointed level. We would want it where, just as the comment was made tonight, if people don't like it and enough people don't like it, then they can vote the people out of office. Because ultimately you're putting your trust in who you put there. So that was feedback that we gave. We didn't want it as a use by right, we wanted it at the council. And I believe, knowing that we have this much support from all of you on code enforcement, that we'll be bringing you some ideas on staffing plans to address that, because this is a head count issue to have the staff time to do the things that you're talking about. And if we want to do that and we're going to hold staff accountable for that, then you need to give us the head count to do it.
Okay. Sarah, you said you had something else?
Well, I would say I would certainly support ideas that would come from citizens and staff on tools that are needed to help you see where there's a nuisance and to measure a nuisance, and like the parking restrictions, and what would help clarify what is a nuisance for people, because I don't like the idea that someone would go in the house and count beds. That's weird. So I think tools are needed for enforcement, and I would certainly be willing to brainstorm as well. The other thing is traffic calming and ways to address the traffic issues and wider sidewalks and all that kind of thing, to really plan for more people in these areas. And we can use GIS to be really looking at where are the population densities going to be and what are the traffic calming needs. Cleveland is a great example of, they have the plan in place. We need to bring forward the ways we slow people down. So I would like to add, and it sounds like you can see where people are going, but I want to make sure people know, in general, the public and the council know, that I think this has been a very worthwhile discussion. And regardless of how people finally vote for this or finally feel about it, it's a very worthwhile discussion, and it's very important that these are always cordial and professional and kind. And I think we can disagree professionally. And so I just want to say that, make sure that the two aldermen that brought this forward with the idea that any alderman can bring something forward. At that point, it's up to the council to decide if it passes, but any alderman can bring something forward. And I think that anything is worth discussing at the council level. So, thank you.
Anybody else? All right. Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Lewis,
No.
Gray, yes. Boudreaux,
Yes.
Kenyon,
No.
Petty,
Yes.
Tennant,
Yes.
Farrell,
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you all very much. Y'all want a break?
Yes, please.
All right. Let's take a,
It's 9 o'clock.
well, let's take a, what do you want, about 10-minute break? Say good? I'd like to go ahead and call the city council meeting back to order.
We got quorum.
Okay. The next order of business we have is rezoning 12-4028, 1400, 1500 blocks of North DeSoto Place, Abishire Heights, and ordinance rezoning that property described in rezoning petition RZN 12-4028 for approximately 2.18 acres located at 1400 and 1500 block North DeSoto Place, Track A of Abishire Heights from RPZD, Residential Plan Zoning District R, BZD 06, 1883 to RSF 8, Residential Single Family, 8 units per acre. I will entertain a motion to go to the second reading.
So moved. Second?
We have a motion to second to go to the second reading. Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Lewis,
Yes.
Gray,
Yes.
Boudreaux,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Petty,
Yes.
Tennant,
Yes.
Farrell,
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
An ordinance rezoning that property described in rezoning petition RZN 12-4028 for approximately 2.18 acres located at 1400 and 1500 block of North DeSoto Place from RPZD 06-1883 to RSF 8, Residential Single Family, 8 units per acre.
Andrew?
Yes, sir. This property is located directly behind Ozark Natural Foods. It's on the west side of Hillcrest Avenue. We do have the property pulled up on the aerial photo to get your bearings. In 2006, the council approved the PZD for Abishire Heights, which approved 24 multifamily units. And as you can see, the southern yellow marker there is a portion that is proposed to be rezoned. It's about 2 acres of the Abishire Heights property. A portion of the property has been developed with one of the multifamily buildings. This particular applicant is interested in developing the southern portion for single-family homes, and so they would like to rezone that portion to RSF 8, which is residential single-family, 8 units per acre. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
What questions does council have? Staff? Sarah?
It's my understanding that RSF 8 falls under the form-based code. Is that right?
No.
No, it does not. I was thinking it did. Okay.
Most single-family zones
Aren't that way. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? What public comment do we have on this? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council.
Move we suspend the rules. Move we suspend the rules and go to the next reading.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to second go to the third and final reading. Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Lewis,
Yes.
Gray,
Yes.
Boudreaux,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Petty,
Yes.
Tennant,
Yes.
Farrell,
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
An ordinance rezoning that property described in rezoning petition RZN 12-4028 for approximately 2.18 acres located at 1400 and 1500 block of North DeSoto Place from RPZ 06-1883 to RSF 8 residential single family, 8 units per acre.
Any final comments from the council on this?
I have a question.
Okay.
Did you discuss form-based with the developer, Andrew?
I can't
You or
recall
your
if we
team?
discussed form-based codes or not. I think the RSF 8 we felt like was a good transition between the existing regular single-family 40 units an acre to the east side of Hillcrest and Ozark Natural Foods. So I think their proposal, we felt like it was appropriate, and we didn't recommend another zoning district.
See, that was a good answer. He doesn't remember. You can do my job, man. Go ahead.
I have a question just about that word transition, because I know I've heard Jeremy use that word before too. What are you looking for when you consider what is a good transition in a zoning issue like that?
It just depends on every neighborhood. I mean, usually you're looking, like in this particular situation, it's a really abrupt transition between, you know, the really heavy commercial with the commercial strip center and the single family neighborhoods. So we felt like a little bit higher density single family was appropriate in between these two uses.
Thank you.
And multifamily would have been appropriate too, and that's what it originally was zoned for. So they're actually down zoning it a little bit to get to the residential single family. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Everybody good?
I have a question.
Sure.
So the utilities are already in there, is that correct? And they're probably back further than
The
a
utilities.
form-based code. I wonder if that may be.
Sorry. Yeah, the utilities and the infrastructure has been installed. You can see there's DeSoto Place, which is kind of a shared private alley, which runs just along the west side there. It's a pretty abrupt grade change between Hillcrest and the actual pad, so the utilities are down on the west side.
Okay. Thank you.
Has there been any comment from the neighborhood regarding this?
When the PZD originally came through,
Right,
there
besides that,
was
yes.
quite a bit of comment.
Right, I recall that.
But with this proposal, we had a couple of inquiries from the neighbors asking about what was being proposed. When I talked to them about, you know, it's going to be single family, it's going to be a down zoning, we didn't have any objections. At the Planning Commission meeting, I think a couple of neighbors showed up and just had some questions, but they said on the record they were not opposed to it.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, we're on the final reading. Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Lewis,
Yes.
Gray,
Yes.
Boudreaux,
Yes.
Kenyon.
Yes.
Petty,
Yes.
Tennant.
Yes.
Farrell.
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
Okay, thank you all. Number 3, ADM 12-4029, Abshire Heights, RPZD, modification number 4. An ordinance amending the residential plan zoning district entitled RPZD 06-1883, Abshire Heights, located at the northwest corner of Abshire Drive and Hillcrest Avenue, containing approximately 4.11 acres to reflect revised architectural standards as described and depicted herein. I'll entertain a motion to go to
So
second reading.
moved. Second.
Have a motion and a second to go to the second reading. Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Lewis,
Yes.
Gray,
Yes.
Boudreaux,
Yes.
Kenyon.
Yes.
Petty,
Yes.
Tennant.
Yes.
Farrell.
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
An ordinance amending RPZD 6-1883 Abshire Heights, located at the northwest corner of Abshire Drive and Hillcrest Avenue, containing approximately 4.11 acres, to reflect revised architectural standards as described and depicted herein.
Andrew.
You can see on the aerial photo again, Abshire Heights project, this building was obviously built. Where this yellow marker is where the applicant wants to build another building, which has been approved with the PZD. And they're proposing to build the second building there. The PZD ordinance actually had written in some specific requirements about the architecture of the building, and there were some agreements that went back and forth. When the PZD was approved, it actually required some stone on the back side of the buildings. And the particular applicant is asking the council to modify that requirement to allow for brick instead of stone. And staff recommends in favor of it. We feel like it's appropriate requirement. The buildings really aren't even visible from any of the surrounding roads. And at the Planning Commission meeting, it was unanimously forwarded with recommendation for approval.
Questions for the staff? Sarah.
I move we suspend the rules and go to third.
Second.
All right. We have a motion and a second to go to the third and final reading. Let me take some public comment. I'm sorry. Is any public comment on this issue? Yes. Aubrey?
I didn't
Did
really
somebody
think-
second that motion to go to the third?
Yes,
reading?
Rhonda did.
Okay, thank you all. Yes.
Aubrey Shepherd, 1101 South Duncan Avenue, Fayetteville, Arkansas. I believe this is the same land. Can you show us where Faye Jones' house is on that land? Gus Didn't
It's
say
at
Jones?
Evelyn Hills area, if I remember.
He lives on Hillcrest, was it?
Yeah.
Jones.
So this, is this just straight across the street?
Yes.
Yeah.
In between Evelyn Hills and.
I've got a video, I think I've got it on YouTube, but I'm not sure, from the meeting when you had more people, just like this crowd tonight, way back, what year was that?
2006.
Was it 6? That
That's
late?
what they tell us.
Okay, and Gus Jones came in here. I don't remember her speaking in public before that, you know, in a public meeting like this. Maybe she did sometime, but he was gone. I visited with him 2 weeks before he died. Got a lot of pictures on the internet from that day. But she came up and spoke about protecting her neighborhood and all the others. So it was very much like tonight. Were you here, Kit, maybe? Or Mayor, I think you were on the council then, and I can't remember who else was. But anyhow, since none of those folks showed up to speak tonight, I thought I would put in a word for what they said. And you guys that were on the council remember some of that, I think, about the protection of this area. And I don't know what the plan is or anything about it, but I just wanted you to remember that night, one particular night, that it was so crowded. And if you remember some of it, maybe we'll come back to you what could have been said tonight if some of those people were available. Thank you.
All right.
May I just say something? I'm not asking a question, but Cammie Jones, their daughter, and Bobby, we all went to school together. I mean, Cammie didn't express any concerns about this going to brick. I mean, there was no concerns about it not matching their place. I mean, she's not here, but
who's that?
he was referring to Faye Jones and the house and everything, and Cammie was at that meeting.
Cammie was at one of the meetings.
Whenever they were speaking about the stone and everything, and I think if there were any concerns about that, because that did go through the planning commission, and I don't, because as you pointed out, you can't really see it because it's below the bluff area so I mean, I would certainly respect that if it was a concern, but I don't think it is. So.
At the planning commission, did anybody speak against this project?
Certainly not on this particular part of it, Mayor. They were only concerned a little bit about the density on the other one, but no one was against the brick.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Yes, Sarah.
And I want to point out that it says, remove the requirement for stone on the back of the development and replace it with the requirement for brick on the facade on the back of the development. So I would just say that, clarify if it's or on the back or and on the back. Facade and the back, or facade or the back on the language. On it, so it's 9 of 20. I don't know, I may be looking at a different note, but.
Yeah. I think we were trying to say brick on the facade on the back of the development.
Okay. So on the surface, what you're thinking. Okay. I'm thinking facade when you're I think it's fine. I just want to make sure that it's clear when they're doing it that it's where the neighbors would like it to be. So.
I think the intent was just simply to replace the stone with brick.
Right, and I understand the intent, but I wanted to say it so that they are held to it. So I think if that's what you mean, so you're saying the surface of the back of the.
That's the facade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's clear, and if not, I'm sure Andrew can make sure that they understand what the intent of the city council is.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, we have a motion and a second to go to the third and final reading, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Sonda, would you please call the roll?
Lewis.
Yes.
Gray,
Yes.
Boudreaux,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Petty,
Yes.
Tennant.
Yes.
Farrell.
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
An ordinance amending RPZD 6-1883 Absher Heights, located at the northwest corner of Absher Drive and Hillcrest Avenue, containing approximately 4.11 acres to reflect revised architectural standards as described and depicted herein.
Any final comments to the council on this? Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Lewis,
Yes.
Gray,
Yes.
Boudreaux,
Yes.
Kenyon.
Yes.
Petty,
Yes.
Tennant.
Yes.
Farrell.
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
Okay, under new business, number 1, Regional Urban Stormwater Education Program, an ordinance waiving the requirements of formal competitive bidding and approving memorandum of understanding with the MS4 jurisdictions in the Northwest Arkansas Regional Planning Commission in the amount of $45,969 for the Regional Urban Stormwater Education Program to be provided by the University of Arkansas Cooperative Extension Service to satisfy portions of the NPDES Phase 2 stormwater permit requirements. Kit?
Whereas the provisions of the attached memorandum of understanding meet the city of Fayetteville's need for stormwater education and outreach as part of its stormwater Phase 2 permit requirements, and whereas the University of Arkansas Cooperative Extension Service can efficiently and effectively provide this service at a significant savings to the citizens of Fayetteville. Now therefore be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Fayetteville, Arkansas, Section 1, that the City Council of the City of Fayetteville, Arkansas hereby determines an exceptional situation exists in which competitive bidding is deemed not feasible or practical, and therefore waives the requirements of formal competitive bidding and approves a memorandum of understanding marked as Exhibit A, attached hereto and made a part hereof, between the City of Fayetteville, Arkansas, the MS4 jurisdictions, and the Northwest Arkansas Regional Planning Commission in the amount of $45,969 for the Regional Urban Stormwater Education Program to be provided by the University of Arkansas Cooperative Extension Service to satisfy portions of the NPDES Phase 2 stormwater permit requirements.
Chris, I believe you have this.
Thank you. Since 2003, the cities of Washington County that are MS4s have been partnering through the Regional Planning Commission, and the Regional Planning is just the clearinghouse. The money's paid to them, and they turn and pay it to the Extension Service as the contractor. So they've all been partnering to cover 3 items of the permit requirement for our ADEQ permit: public education outreach, public involvement and participation, and pollution prevention and good housekeeping. Those are 3 items that are required in the city's permit, and this is a method to get those covered for us. It's been a really good partnership. You guys heard Katie Teague last week talk about all the things that they've done, and we're certainly recommending that to continue this partnership for 2012. I'll answer any questions.
Any questions for Chris on this? Everybody good? Okay. What public comment do we have on this?
Bobby, you expected me to do this?
I could have won money.
I'm very much in favor of this, obviously, but
It's good to know you're not opposed to it all.
but I just wish that you guys would take this opportunity to have a few words addressed on specifically just in the, I know it was in the agenda session, you heard the big program, not everybody pays attention to that. Just what's included, what kind of training, who gets trained. For instance, my thoughts come to the guys building our sewer and planning where those are going, the guys building our sidewalks, our streets, our trails, all the things that are affected and have an effect on stormwater. And that's why I would suggest that you let the public know just a few more words about it from the guys who know here. Thank you.
Thank you all. Okay. Sarah.
I completely agree, and I think one of the major things that could go further, and I think it's maybe Chris, or I'm not sure who is, Chris, I think I would put a plug in for this, and I think I was involved in, I was involved in some of the workshops before, and I think they're really good. What I would like to see, and because one part of this is training for municipal employees, which is essential for on the ground folks. The workshops are really, really good. What I hope that we can expand, and maybe you've done this before and that's great, but I think we need to expand it and spend the most time in this, is get people out and demonstrate what it means to put in a silt fence, what it means to reseed something, what it means to slow down the runoff. So because it's hard to really understand it conceptually until you've done it. So I hope that this will incorporate that next step of actually being out in training while they're working. Just being out doing a job and having Katie or whoever it is there going, okay, let's do it this way, and it becomes more real. And then of course the public involvement and participation in public education is essential, and I'm excited about that our community is willing to work with the other communities on this, because it's not a political boundary issue, it's a watershed issue. So it's really important to partner. So thank you.
Anybody
So thank
else?
you, Chris.
Would you all like to go to the second reading?
I'd move that we go to the second reading.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to go to the second reading. Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Lewis.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Boudreaux.
Yes.
Kenyon.
Yes.
Petty.
Yes.
Tennant.
Yes.
Farrell.
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
An ordinance waiving the requirements of formal competitive bidding and approving a memorandum of understanding with the MS4 jurisdictions and the Northwest Arkansas Regional Planning Commission in the amount of $45,969 for the Regional Urban Stormwater Education Program to be provided by the University of Arkansas Cooperative Extension Service to satisfy portions of the MPDES Phase 2 stormwater permit requirements.
Suspend the rules and go to the third and final reading.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to go to the third and final reading. Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Lewis.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Boudreaux.
Yes.
Kenyon.
Yes.
Petty.
Yes.
Tennant.
Yes.
Farrell.
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
An ordinance waiving the requirements of formal competitive bidding and approving a memorandum of understanding with the MS4 jurisdictions and the Northwest Arkansas Regional Planning Commission in the amount of $45,969 for the Regional Urban Stormwater Education Program to be provided by the University of Arkansas Cooperative Extension Service to satisfy portions of the MPDES Phase 2 stormwater permit requirements.
Any final comments from the council? Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Lewis.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Boudreaux.
Yes.
Kenyon.
Yes.
Petty.
Yes.
Tennant.
Yes.
Farrell.
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
Okay, number 2, RZN 12-4042, 1700 Old Wire Road, Cooper and Williams. An ordinance rezoning that property described in rezoning petition RZN 12-4042 for approximately 4.90 acres located at 1700 Old Wire Road from RSF 4, residential single family, 4 units per acre, to NC Neighborhood Conservation subject to a bill of assurance. Kit?
Be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Fayetteville, Arkansas, Section 1, that the City Council of the City of Fayetteville, Arkansas hereby changes the zone classification of the following described property from RSF 4 residential single family 4 units per acre to neighborhood conservation as shown on exhibits A and B attached hereto and made part hereof. Section 2, that the City Council of the City of Fayetteville, Arkansas hereby amends the official zoning map of the City of Fayetteville to reflect the zoning change provided in Section 1. Section 3, that this property is subject to a bill of assurance offered by the property owner and runs with the land, which limits the use of property to exclude duplexes and multifamily dwellings and the number of single-family lots to 20 as shown in Exhibit C attached hereto and made part hereof.
Okay. Oh. You want to hear from staff? Or?
Yes, I want to hear from staff.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
We have, again, the aerial photo pulled up to get your bearings on where this property is. It's addressed at 1700 Old Wire Road, and it's within walking distance of Root Elementary School. And in 2011, December, the City Council rezoned RZN 113960. You can see we have the blue marker up there, and that was about 8.6 acres to neighborhood conservation. And if you remember, that particular piece of property had 3 street stub outs connected to it And this is the same applicant that proposed that rezoning. They're also proposing neighborhood conservation with a bill of assurance. This additional, just about 5 acres would be added into and included with that development. This property is adjacent to Clarence Craft Park, which is adjacent to the south and associated with Neocoska Creek. So it does have some floodplain in it in that southwestern corner. We are recommending in favor of the rezoning to neighborhood conservation, which is a form-based zone. And this was heard at the Planning Commission meeting, and we didn't have any public opposition or really any comment at all on this one. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah.
Oh, that kind of concerns me since we had so much neighborhood interaction on the other one. And I do realize that had the connector streets, but it was raised at that time concerns about the proximity to the creek and the density and the potential for creating flooding whenever you impact that small of an area. So I'm not saying whether I support it or not, but I'd certainly want to leave it on, you know, no more than the second reading tonight. It's so late, and I'm not, you know, I'd rather certainly would want to wait.
All right, I'm fine.
On the first now?
If it's on the first now, well, let's just leave it there.
Oh, go second. You said
Do I hear a motion?
What do y'all want to do, kids?
I was waiting for you to do take.
I'm fixing to do just that very thing.
That all.
Anybody from the public like to speak on this?
Tim Cooper, architect on the project, and I just might say one thing. At Planning Commission, there was no comment at all, basically, and there was no issues or anything like that, like the first time. So I don't know if it was the fact that it was on the other side of the development or what, but by the new rezoning would allow us to do 49 units, and we're basically, you know, more than half of that. So really, the zoning is going to be 4 units. I mean, not the zoning, the use with 20 units an acre that we've given in the document is basically going to give us 4 units an acre that we're actually going to use. So it's not a whole lot different than what it is. So.
Well, my question then, Mayor, so the reason you're going though with the neighborhood conservation zoning is because if you were using 4 units per acre zoning, you wouldn't be able to build it out because you'd have to be running into the floodplain.
Smaller lots and push.
So you're going to have smaller lots and closer to the.
Right.
Okay.
So.
And I mean, was there any public there? I mean, or did they just not speak? They just weren't there. Maybe they weren't aware of this. Somehow. I
did receive a couple of phone calls or emails inquiring, and once we gave them the bill, showed them what was being proposed, I didn't hear back from them.
Okay. Bobby and then Mark.
Mayor, I think that the deal in this was that the first time that the other parcel came through, it did deal with the streets, and that's what brought so many people out, because of that one street right off of Mission. Yeah, Charlie. Well, I will say I went out there and walked it with these gentlemen, and at that time they told me that other property might come up, and that they pointed to the low spot along the creek and the park right on the other side of it, and said they thought that were that to come about, they thought they'd be able to accommodate that with the way that the placement of the lots. And I would move that we suspend the school second reading.
Oh yeah, motion's there. Let me get Mark's questions.
Well, when we went and looked at that area, what I'm understanding is if we change the zoning, it's going to pull it up more from the creek, because they'll have more of the back of the lot to the creek, and then it'll be bringing the homes closer up to the street.
Away from the creek. There's actually a utility easement that goes through there, and then there's a little bit of floodplain that kind of starts down at the corner where that little gravel. You see that white line? That's kind of a gravel drive. Anyway, where that meets, it just kind of angles down with the floodplain, and so that whole area is not even usable down there. So so the houses will be pulled back, and it really frees up and helps the flow of traffic in the development. Just some schematics that we had done by adding this property, and we would have brought this property together with the other property, but the landowner had some medical things going on and that kind of thing that he just wasn't able to meet with us and get it done before. So it would have been a hypothetical situation.
So there's going to be less excavation there also with with this zoning change, because you'll be bringing it up out of the where it drops off into that floodplain.
Right. Yeah, sure.
I'm Jackson Williams, involved in the project as well. You see the white gravel road to the north there, they're kind of splits,
Yes.
the blue and the yellow piece. There will basically be homes fronting that white gravel road. Of course, it'll all be different, but the lots are about 100 feet deep. So most of
Okay,
that.
and that'll allow you to bring it up, the
Right,
neighborhood
most of the
conservation.
property to the south will be for retention, and then there's the stream side ordinance that comes from that stream to the north. So most of that's green space.
Okay.
And there won't have to be a retention pond there because you have enough of the runoff to run off the property.
That's an engineering question that I
There'll
can't
still be
answer.
one on the property for sure.
There will be.
I just remember that it drops off pretty significantly there, and I'm wondering about the velocity of the flow into the
Yeah.
and erosion, but I'm sure,
Yeah.
I think this is probably better with the neighborhood conservation to pull it up. Okay.
Okay, everybody good? Oh, we have a motion and a second to go to the second reading. It's amazing how I remembered that. At this late hour. Sandra, would you please come?
Lewis. Yes. Gray.
Yes.
Boudreaux.
Yes.
Kenyon.
Yes.
Hetty.
Yes.
Tennant.
Yes.
Farrell.
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
An ordinance rezoning that property described in rezoning petition RZN 12-4042 for approximately 5 acres located at 1700 Old Wire Road from residential single-family 4 units per acre to neighborhood conservation, subject to a bill of assurance.
Want to leave it there? What do y'all want to do?
Gotta have something to do next meeting.
Yeah, we need something to do next meeting. Well, this next one, we get to do it again too.
Yes, I kind of figured we might. Anyway, moving right along tonight. So we leave that on second one. Number 3, amend Chapter 161, ADM 12-4085, zoning regulations RMF 24 setbacks. An ordinance to amend 161.14 District RMF 24 by repealing the separate setbacks for multifamily structures built within the Hillside Hilltop Overlay District. Kip.
Whereas ordinance number 5262, passed by the City Council on August 4th, 2009, changed multifamily setbacks to a 10 to 25 build-to zone to require buildings to be moved closer to the street, but failed to repeal the Hillside Hilltop Overlay District setbacks, which did not include this build-to zone. And whereas the planning staff recommends that the setbacks specific to the Hillside Hilltop Overlay District be repealed, so that all RMF 24 districts have the same build-to zones and side and rear setbacks. Now therefore it be resolved by the City Council of the City of Fayetteville, Arkansas, Section 1, that the City Council of the City of Fayetteville, Arkansas hereby amends Section 161.14 of the UDC by repealing the Hillside Hilltop Overlay District setback requirements within Section 161.14E.
Okay, who's got this on staff?
As mentioned in reading the ordinance, in 2009, the zoning code was changed to require build-to zone and form-based zoning districts in our multifamily zoning districts, and we incorporated the build-to zone in all the multifamily zoning districts. It was just a minor oversight that we did not include the RMF 24 zoning districts when we changed that setback at that time. And so, keeping with the intent of the Hillside Overlay District ordinance, and really just integrating it into the zoning code, removing that setback would allow for buildings to be closer to the street, and would be make all the zoning districts consistent throughout the multifamily. This wouldn't weaken the Hillside Overlay District in any way. There's still required 30% tree canopy preserved and 30% undisturbed throughout development of these lots. So it's really just a clarification, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Brenda?
Well, I do have some questions. The way it reads, that all RMF 24 districts have the same build-to zones and side and rear setbacks. So in other words, all the setbacks are build-to? That's my first question. In other words, all the setbacks, the side, the front, the rear, are all like they are in all RMF 24 zones?
The build-to zone is just along the front. It really shouldn't say.
Well, it does say that. It says and side and rear setbacks.
Well, it says, side and rear setbacks. They're setbacks, not build-to zones. The front is their own build-to zone.
Okay, so it hasn't changed the side or rear setbacks, okay? So that's the next question. If you're allowing a reduced amount of front setback, which is a build-to, and you have retained the same side and back setbacks, then you have increased the impervious surface that you've put on that lot, right?
No, the requirement is still the same as far as you can, in the hillside, you can only disturb a certain percentage of the site. So we're not changing that, you're just moving the envelope forward.
You're just moving it forward. You're not changing the back or side setbacks at all.
Correct.
Well, the side setback is 8 feet in both of them. The rear setback is 25 feet in non-hillside and 15 foot in the hillside. So you're actually increasing the rear setback by 10 feet if you remove the hilltop provision.
You're increasing the setback.
You're increasing it by 10 feet, from 15 feet to 25 feet. That's on page 4 of 10.
So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
whatever
Right.
you all decide, that's a good thing.
That's a good thing in that it decreases the impervious surfacing, or increases the impervious surface.
Well, it just requires where you're going to put your building.
It reduces the footprint. That's easier. Right.
Well,
Okay.
not necessarily, because you still have some requirements about limits on bulk and area, which really does control the size of the footprint of the building more than what the setbacks do. Because you could have a giant lot, and so you have real long setbacks, and so you could still have a very big building in there.
Except the percentage is
Percentage is still
Andrew
gonna be
said,
protected.
The percentage is still intact.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So that is different than the RMF 24 setback, zone, right? In that it's a hillside overlay. This is not,
Right. That's correct.
okay.
That's correct. There's still some other ordinances in place that are set, like that's under the grading ordinances and also tree preservation, that still require the same those things for not disturbing huge amounts of the hillside and leaving 30% tree canopy in certain areas and things like that.
All this is doing is just giving them the ability to move it forward in situations where it would be better for both the site and the builder and everyone concerned. Okay.
You're moving the building envelope in just a different location.
Okay.
You're requiring it to be forward. The hilltop district has a setback.
Well,
and
what
now
if-
you're going to have a build-to, and so you require the building to move forward.
Well, then that's another question then. If you're requiring it, and if the hillside's not going in the best way for that to be a good thing as far as runoff and everything, is that something they can appeal if that's a problem, an issue?
I think that would be a very rare chance where you would have a building sitting way at the very back of a hillside lot, because typically your access is from the street in the front. There was some rare
There's some
case
where the
where
hill
you would
goes
have
down.
a long
Yeah.
driveway cutting all the way up over the hill and down to the back where the home would sit at the back or something. You could ask for a variance, and I think topography is certainly something the Board of Adjustment can consider in looking at a variance. I think that would be the exception. That would not be the norm, which is we're trying to change the code where, to cover most situations.
Okay. Okay.
So if I'm understanding correctly too, and I'm looking for that as well, so if it says to a build-to zone located between 10 feet and a line 25 feet, so they could be, the build-to zone has there's a range?
15 feet of give, between
There's
10
a
and
give.
25 feet from the
Right.
right of way.
So they could put it anywhere in there with that in mind, saying there's a build-to zone, it moves it up, but it's still, you could have flexibility in dealing with runoff or soil infiltration.
So you could still go back 25 feet? I thought
Correct.
you had to build to.
It's between 10 and 25
Okay, 10
feet.
and 25.
Yes, Bob.
Mayor, I would move that we go to suspend the rules and go to second reading
I'll
if the
second
Hillside
it.
Princess agrees.
I'll second it.
Well, let me take some, yes, come on up, Aubrey, let me take some public comment.
Aubrey Shepherd again. Sorry about these embarrassing nights. It's more embarrassing for me than you when I come talk on so many subjects. But quote Faye Jones again. Why are you limiting the architect placement on a lot? One side of the road is steep this way, and the next house is down here on this side of the road. We're talking about hillside ordinance, right?
That's correct.
So is it reasonable to force them to jam it up to the road? Do you want to live on the downside of that road? There are places in Fayetteville now built so that, you know, I took somebody home a couple of times during the ice storm using four-wheel drive. And it was just terrifying to get in and out of those places. I hope we're not allowing any more to be built that way. And I would think nobody would buy one, you know, and there were people up there with, you know what I'm saying? You've heard about them all.
I do, I've seen.
And so why make an arbitrary rule, put something in there that does not allow them to do the best placement on the property? And this just doesn't seem necessary.
I have kind of a thought on this. If you're already
Okay,
doing
Mark.
the infrastructure and you're grading the road, and you're having the infrastructure, then there's less disturbance of the hillside if it's closer to where you're already having the excavation. So would this be a valid reason? Does that seem valid? I mean, I'm sure that's what was the intent was with this anyway. And so you actually are having better preservation in the back of the lot. So there's less variation in the natural terrain.
That's kind of the way I
Well,
look at it, too.
all land is different, and
That's
so you
true.
have different slopes. If you go like on Rogers Drive, you will see a whole bunch of houses that this would not work in.
Oh, I can see that.
And so I do, to some extent, agree with Aubrey on this, that sometimes one rule can't really fit all conditions, and you know, sometimes the placement of the house is going to be controlled by the slope of the land, the best placement of the house. I know it's shocking. I agree with you, Robbie.
Well, I mean.
Oh,
this is
privately,
good
you've
discussion.
agreed with me a couple of times before.
Sarah? You,
So it sounds like, and I mean, you're talking about wonky urban design earlier, Matthew, but that's, you know, in stormwater management and planning around stormwater, there is a need for flexibility and being able to design for the site. Tell me about the language. What would happen, what would allow or encourage the developer to really take into consideration the existing slope of the land, the existing soil, before putting a ton of work into the build to zone? Because I agree that if you take across the board, generally speaking, if we can move them close to the road, you're going to minimize impact and grading, because you're already grading the road. But we don't want to also be saying, nope, you've got to build two, even though all the trees are out front, all the stormwater infiltration is out front, all the soil stability is out front between the road and the potential house. So
Apartments.
the original hillside, hilltop ordinance setbacks were reduced for that very purpose, to encourage the builder to build closer to the street if they wanted to, because, and the roads were gonna be narrower, we're gonna make it as wider roads. And so that was to encourage them to move forward, but not require it. This one would actually require them to move forward and allow them to move even 5 feet closer if they wanted to, but require them to be within 25 feet. It might be something that you could take a tour and take a look at some of the properties around before you make a final decision on this.
Well, I take it we will. I have a motion of a second to go to second reading, but we don't have to take it any further than that if you all want.
Yeah, we can leave it on that, and I would want to until,
I mean, this is
did
a
have
good
one other
discussion. I find it interesting.
Yeah.
Actually, Auburn brings up a pretty good point, because I've
Thank
seen a
you.
few of those kind of houses.
well, I did have another question. You said that, did I understand you say that someone needed to build this way? That's the reason this, why was this brought forward?
Originally it was because, you know, in our city plan, we have traditional town form as the norm. That was one of the intents behind the form-based zoning code, where you have buildings closer to the street and parking generally to the side or in the rear. So we changed all of the multifamily zoning districts to have form-based zones where the apartments would be up closer to the street. And in 2009, we changed all the multifamily zoning districts to get rid of the setbacks, except for in the HHOD, it had a separate requirement, and we got rid of that in all the other multifamily zoning districts, except for RMF 24, we just happened to have left it out. And really in this case, we feel like the HHOD and the form-based zoning code really work hand in hand, and by a build-to zone really is in line with the HHOD, so we didn't need a separate requirement.
Well, so you're saying that, I guess I don't remember. So there is a required build-to line in all the other zones?
In all the multifamily zoning districts.
Yeah.
No, on the hillside ordinance. I'm not talking about them on the hillside ordinance.
Yes.
So they have to build close to the street? I thought we had this, but I thought there was exceptions to that.
There would always be we have not had I don't believe we've had one apartment complex built since we've
now
had this.
I'm back to just the single family residential that you're saying requires this.
Yeah, single family does not.
No.
That's what I just asked you, and you said it did. And so I was really confused, or I misunderstood you. So I guess I don't understand why we're even messing with the hillside ordinance at all. Personally.
We've already
I'm tired,
messed with it.
and I want to stop. And you know, if we just need to
Well,
leave it on the
if-
second
if I
reading
could
so we
just-
can debate this further, we'll just do that.
Brenda, if I can just get everybody to vote on this motion, move it to the second reading, we stop all this
Just
tonight,
stop
and then we can pick it up in 2
Good.
weeks, and everybody's a little fresher.
Good.
How's that sound, everyone?
Sounds good.
Sound good, Aubrey? Okay. That's unanimous. All right.
So we're gonna call.
I believe we
for a
have a
second.
motion and a second. Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Lewis.
Yes.
Gray. Yes. Boudreaux.
Yes.
Kenyon.
Yes.
Petty.
Yes.
Tennant.
Yes.
Farrell.
Yes.
Adams.
An ordinance to amend section 161.14 District RMF 24 by repealing the separate setbacks for multifamily structures built within the hillside, hilltop overlay district.
Okay, we're gonna leave it on the second reading. All right, number 4, Come and Go LC, a resolution to grant the appeal of Come and Go LC and to amend and approve its large-scale development to agree with the plat submitted with its appeal letter. Chris, do you have this, or who has this? I'm sorry.
I can start this off. The city council approved their large-scale development with the median if the highway department would agree with the median. Highway department did not agree with the median. Part of that resolution said they had the right to come back to you if the highway department had turned down the median, and now they are back.
It's wonderful to see you.
Good evening. Well, hopefully this is the last one to be the easiest one. So again, as Kim mentioned, we prepared plans. We worked with Chris, come up with a median design. We sent it to district office. The district office said they didn't feel comfortable reviewing it, so they sent it to Little Rock and went up to the top floor at Little Rock. They said, well, we don't like it, we can't support it. And I think it's in your letter. So we're back here tonight. I think one last option Chris and I talked about is maybe doing some striping out there, reflectorized markers, and I guess we're just looking for some resolution to move this thing forward and let us go. So.
Yes.
Me too.
And this resolution would require that they, along with the city, request from the State Highway Department the using of stripes and or reflectorized markers, and pay for it if the Highway Department will approve it. And so that's where we're at. And this resolution also says that if the Highway Department doesn't approve the striping, the LSD is approved anyway, but they must attempt to do it, and they're responsible to pay for it if it can get approved.
Everybody good with that?
Yes.
All right. Any other public comment on this? Everybody good? Oh, yes, Aubrey, I'm sorry. Sorry.
I live down there, and I'll repeat, and I did have more support when the Planning Commission heard it, because some of the people actually on the commission testified how dangerous that intersection is there. And the young man who has a boat building shop just north of the intersection was worried about what effect the changes that are allowed for this project will have on his land, which runs from Hill Avenue west to the railroad. It goes behind there, and he might, before at some point, want to put something on there in addition to the small duplex type of building that's already down there, and have access to it. But I didn't talk to him this week, so I don't know if he was aware of this coming back. So the safety is the only thing to talk about, and it really is true. I mean, if you could, you might want to go stand out there, and I think city engineer spoke last time that they didn't have much time to record the video they showed, but doggone, it's got to be safer than it needs to be made safer. It's sort of like the stormwater. People always say we won't, we just can't allow more than runs off now. Well, inevitably it does if you change the soil out and pave. And inevitably, if you increase the number of human beings, you're going to increase the number of vehicle trips, and they're going to be faster, and it's mostly student drivers, and that point was made in Planning Commission here, I think, in the past. But anyhow, I think all these things should be final before the council turns it loose. All those permissions should be final.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I think my concern here is similar to that, and I can't help but think of a deadly accident that occurred within minutes before I arrived on Christmas Eve at Razorback Road and College Avenue, and it was terrifying. It was a left-hand turn in front of a speeding vehicle, and that was with very little traffic on Christmas Eve. I also, of course, lived on Duncan Avenue in Stone and saw a lot of inexperienced drivers have collisions there because of the proximity with the high school. The way that I read this is if the highway department says, I'm sorry, you can't have the striping and the lines, then there's a left-hand turn there with no restriction. Is that correct?
There's a left hand in, but not a left hand out.
Well, it's the left hand in, I think, that concerns me the most because of how close it is to Hill Street. And we did take a side trip out there and see that the line of sight is kind of restricted due to the change in, it comes down the hill there from Hill Street. So it's almost like giving. It's hard for me to support an open-ended document like that with safety that is a real concern that I guess I have witnessed, and that's my concern. And there's no one that loves come and go hot dogs more than I do. And I go to there all the time, and I take a left turn in sometimes on College, and it's not wise, and I'm an old man, and I'm slow. But this is not, I guess I've got to say it because it's on my mind.
That's good. Great. Yeah, Chris.
Well, yeah, just to address that concern a little bit, we are recommending a striping in place of the median. Obviously, it's not guaranteed that the highway department will approve that, but there are some other striping options that maybe may not be the best option. But I fully believe that we can come up with a striping plan that the highway department will permit that will increase the safety of the driveway. There's been a lot of water under this bridge. We've gone through a lot of different iterations here, but ultimately, I believe we can may take a couple more back and forths with the highway department, but I believe we can come to a solution that will make it safer than the existing striping is right now.
So,
I would like to propose an amendment that removes the part where it says, condition of approval is removed from the large-scale development requirements and come and go. I like the idea that they would continue to figure out what kind of striping they're going to do, not remove the condition. So if if we have to keep working with the highway department to figure out the striping, great. But I'm not comfortable, and I know we're tired, and I'm not comfortable with passing something because we're tired, and we've heard this so many times. But there's no reason to have the condition if they say no and then just forget it all. And so I would like to make propose an amendment to this. Is this a resolution?
Say what?
So everything just below that, this condition of approval is removed from the large-scale development requirements if the Arkansas Highway Department and Transportation denies the right to double stripe and or used raised reflector markers as recommended, this condition of approval is removed from large-scale development requirements.
So you would like to look at it again then if it's not?
No, I trust that staff will continue to work with them. I don't want us to remove that condition if...
It's just giving a free pass, kind of.
Well, I think that what Chris is saying, we intend to keep working with them. We're not going to remove the condition. So why are we saying we're going to remove the condition?
Okay.
And I believe that's what we want, is the ability to work with staff as opposed to coming back to this body every time.
And I agree with that as well. But I don't want to remove the condition, and that's what this says, is that we would remove the condition.
If the highway department denies any striping at all, then you want to see this back then, is
Then
what
you'll
you're
have
saying.
to look at it again.
Because I followed the memo that Chris had written about this. He thinks that he can work with the highway department and come and go and get some striping or reflectorized markers down there. But if we don't say that if that fails, that everything they do working with the highway department fails, if we don't remove the condition at that point, then the large-scale development is not approved anymore. Has to come back again for another appeal.
I'm just saying you'll have to look at it again. And if y'all want to look at it again, I mean, that's up to y'all. But I'm saying, if they want to approve the median and they want to approve the striping, then y'all got to look at it again. I mean, if they want to approve any kind of striping, you see what I'm saying? Yeah. So you got to look at it again, which if you want to do that, that's up to y'all.
Well, so I would say, okay, because I hope that the Arkansas Highway Department does approve it, but I'm also not okay with just removing the condition if they don't.
Okay, I mean, that's up to y'all. You wanted to say something?
Well, I can't speak. I have the developer here come and go as well as the owner, and I think they're kind of running short on the timing of getting this whole deal closed. I mean, we've been working on it for I think 15 months now, so I think there's a threshold here that we are at. I mean, these guys.
Okay.
I mean, I guess
I personally would like to see us go on and just trust that Chris is going to be able to make something happen. Yeah, I think Come and Go has been very, very patient with us and with our regulations, and that's fine. They're used to that, but I think at some point in time we have to decide to let them go, and I that's where I am.
Okay.
So,
And I mean, I'm not trying to be difficult either,
Sure,
but my
sure.
staff, we work with the highway department, they don't let you have a medium and they don't let you have the striping, then it's gotta come back here. I mean, that's all I'm saying.
I think,
You're saying
Mayor,
it
if I could
will
add
come
a
back here.
comment. When we heard this last time, I think you can all remember that the staff's position was very strong on wanting a median or some type of striping for that left-hand turn.
Right.
And that's why we went with that original request in our recommendation and said if that gets denied, we'll come back here because we would want some other alternative.
Right.
When we looked at it this time, the next alternative that the highway department directs us to is striping and reflectors. If they turned it down, then we come back and your decision is whether you go back to just the right in, right out, or whether you allow the third turn. We brought it to you this way because it felt like at the last session that there was the majority of you would have probably moved forward, and we thought for those of you who wouldn't want to, you would make an amendment and then you would have a vote and decide whether you were going to bring it back or not bring it back. And we wrote this on the side of where we believe the majority of you stood at that point. So I'm just saying that to you because if they do turn it down, which I will say to you, I think our last discussions are I'm optimistic that we're going to get it in there. But if they didn't, and we thought the majority of you were going to allow it anyway, that's what we brought forward to you. So for those of you who don't want to do it, you would need to amend it. And if you get the votes of the majority, then it would come back. If right now it is written not to come back. And we didn't want to go through a step if the majority of you were ultimately going to approve it with a 3 turn.
Brenda?
Well, let me just understand this correctly. If the highway department doesn't approve the striping, even though by all indication they will, the project would then just go through without any kind of major striping. Is that correct?
Be no striping, and it would allow a right in, right out, left in.
That would not come back to us at all.
That's right.
That's correct. That condition couldn't continue because the highway department would not allow it. It'd be an impossible condition.
Okay.
But if you all want to look at it again,
I don't want to look at it again.
I don't want to look at it, I agree, but then again,
okay.
I wish we just had approval from the state. I wish they had said yes. We would accept
Well, we do
that.
too. We do too.
So would we, and we've worked very hard trying to
at
get
this. I mean, we've been
but
on this
we have
months.
not been able to obtain it.
Yeah, Mayor, I would just say, we've been at this a long and a hard time with this development, and it seems to me like they've tried to accommodate where we can and compromise. And I kind of like the way that I wish there was more surety, but I like what Don said, and I like what Chris said, that they feel pretty good that the state is going to work with us. So I like the existing resolution, which asks that happen, but if it doesn't, that the LSD goes ahead. So if we want to vote on Sarah's amendment,
Well, you're going to, I think there's a motion and a second to do just that very thing.
Was there a second?
I didn't.
Now you have one. Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Does the state's recommendation not to do anything matter to us a little bit? I mean, are we going to fuss with the state about what?
It is a state highway, and we will require their approval.
Yeah, I understand. I guess what I'm saying is, doesn't it matter that they don't want to? As we're thinking about this, don't we have to consider that they don't want to make that happen? I'm not saying that well.
Well, we don't know whether the state's final disposition on the striping is no. We know that the final disposition on the median
And why
is
was it
no.
a median? I think that's what I'm asking.
You
see what I'm saying is there's got to be a reason.
The median issue is purely a maintenance issue.
They did not want to maintain
see.
any more of a facility than what they've got out
Purely
there.
maintenance.
Now the striping may be a different deal. There's obviously less maintenance with striping, so it may be a different deal. But the median, 100%, they didn't want to maintain the median.
That's right, they were clear
Thank you.
with that one.
I should have been able to ask that man.
Mayor.
Okay, all right, everybody, hang on a minute.
Maybe we could put a roundabout.
Just real quick, I want to agree with Bobby on this because I think this company has been very, very good in waiting and waiting and waiting on us. We've done our jobs in making them wait and doing it the right way for the right reasons. I go the come and go off Moberly in Rogers every day. I go to the one off Township every day. I make my decision whether to turn left, which I never do because it's not a good idea, Mark.
But I'm a goofhead.
But I think that people, worst case scenario, I still think this thing needs to go there. So, and I'm confident that we can make this happen in some way, shape, or form. I'd rather get this thing done and not have it come back in weeks from now and have them wait to come back again. I'm going to start over.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to amend it to take,
To remove that one sentence that
Right.
would remove the condition.
okay.
And I just have one last thing to say. I'm confident that the state's going to come through with this and it won't be back as much as you all are, but I have to vote my conscience.
I'm good with that.
And I guess that's what I want us to remember is there were some really good reasons why we took a tour of that area. Time does not take away all the risks that were brought up in the first place. So essentially what you're saying is if they don't agree on any of this, then why did we go through all this in the first place? Why did we have any of this discussion? Why did we sit through this and go on tours and discuss all the risks and all the dangers and all the types of drivers if we're just going to remove the conditions that we worked on all those weeks? So I too would like to see the business go in there, but yes, they've tried and that's important and they should try because we do care about the community and the traffic patterns and how people do this. So time and how long this has taken should not be a factor in whether or not we control the traffic in that area. So please consider that in your voting on whether or not to amend this.
Okay. Anybody else?
Can I question what we're voting on right now? We're voting on her amendment.
Right.
That's correct.
All right. All right. Yes.
And I just want to say that it's not only time that we're considering here, it's that we've spent time looking at all these alternatives. So just a period of time is not why I won't support the amendment. I believe we've done due diligence in trying to find alternatives. And at some point, we have to move forward, so.
Okay. If there's not any other comments, Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Lewis,
Voting yes for the amendment.
This is the amendment.
Okay.
Gray,
No.
Boudreaux,
No.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Petty,
Yes.
Tennant,
No.
Farrell,
No.
Adams.
No.
The amendment fails, so you still have the original resolution in front of you.
Okay. Any other comments on that?
I have one.
Yes.
Well, I'm going to be a lone wolf, I guess. I don't think we have done our due diligence on this. I think that one of the first options staff suggested was to utilize the curb cut that was already there for Hill Place Apartments and condemn about 200 square feet of median to make a full a drive with full turning capabilities. And in the spirit of compromise, which isn't necessarily bad, I think we ignored that solution. And frankly, I don't think the city or Come and Go really applied much creative energy to seeing how it could work. I think that was the best solution for all sorts of reasons. For the very basic reasons why we passed an access management plan in the first place, and it preserved all their access to the road for the property and was best for the street and any future properties involved. So I'm not going to make a super passionate argument about it. I think the majority is spoken, but that's my opinion. I won't be able to support this action.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Sandra, would you please call the roll?
Lewis,
No.
Gray,
Yes.
Boudreaux,
Yes.
Kenyon,
No.
Petty,
No.
Tennant,
Yes.
Farrell,
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
Resolution passes.
Okay. What announcements do we have?
We have ward cleanups tonight, don't we, right?
I think we have Ward 3, Saturday, yeah.
Ward
At
2 Saturday.
Vandergriff and Elk Grove.
Vandergriff and Elk Lodge, yeah.
So if you have an old couch, bring it along.
And I want to remind people about the April 5th through May 14th, the
Yes.
Eco Passport has all kinds of events, and I can take no credit in doing this. I'm just telling you to take advantage of it. And thanks for all the work that has gone into this.
First farmer's market.
Farmers Market Saturday.
Yeah, first farm.
Anything else?
Parking deck input sessions tomorrow.
That's exactly right.
That's still on Rain or Shine? Or? Oh, I thought there was gonna be balloons showing the
There's gonna be some.
It'll still be worth going.
So we're to meet at the Walmart Center at 1:30.
That's what I understand. Is that correct, staff?
There's a 1:30 meeting and a
And
And 5, I believe.
it's 1:30 meeting and
5:30, yeah.
Okay.
And both are council, we could go either one.
that'll be Wednesday, April 4th.
They've both been released as public meetings, so 2 or more of you may attend any of them.
Public meeting.
Good point.
Okay. Everybody good?
Yes.
All right, we're adjourned.